Okay, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Looking forward to tonight's stream. It's going to be a fun one, I think. I'm looking forward to it anyway. Granddad Christmas, holy macaroni. Unbelievable. I can't believe it. Granddad Christmas says, wow, a new stream. My daughter would love it. In fact, her first sentence was, I like Bastiat streams. You know, I gotta say, that is a great reference. Of all the first posts to have here tonight, I think that homage to Ted Cruz is really something. So I think that goes on Twitter for sure. That one has to go. We gotta memorialize that one, ladies and gentlemen. That one is that's one to remember, 100%. Okay, so let me save that one before I forget. That's going in there, 100. Oh, I love it. Remind me in an hour, Granddad Christmas, to post that one. That's a good one. Okay, how are you doing tonight, folks? I'm excited. I think this will be a real fun stream. Daniel Anthony, right off the bat, thank you so much for subscribing with Prime Gaming to our stream tonight. Not only did you get to see me dance, but you helped support the channel, so thank you for that, my friend. And beyond that, I gotta say, for a man with taste distinguished enough to use the number one instead of the letter I, you subscribe to the number one political channel in the world. So thanks for that, buddy. Hope you're having a good night. Zoxic, how you doing? Trey, man, I'm doing pretty well. I'm excited to be here. I'm actually very excited. I've actually almost got some new equipment here coming for the stream. I'm gonna get one of those microphone arms that people use, you know, so the microphone is right there in their face. So I think I'm gonna be using that. That's gonna be cool. And I've got another monitor coming, so I'll be able to more easily see people's chats separately instead of having to kind of squint at it. So I'm looking forward to that. A possum friend, thank you for subscribing as well. Really appreciate that. 7 months. That is so cool, my friend. I love bombs. It's good to have you here. Hope you don't love bombs except in self-defense, but it's good to have you. Kilbasa, I am well. I hope you're well too. Damage Cortex, good to have you. Libertax, welcome. Welcome. Colonel Chivers, I do indeed live for the moment, for this day. And I'm glad I'm living here with each and every one of you tonight. Johan, what's up to you too, my friend? I'm doing well. So yeah, folks, we're going to be doing an AMA with a politics Discord server. I think it's going to be fun. In fact, let me see here. Ryan, welcome. It's good to have you, buddy. New camera? Well, the camera isn't new so much as the focus seems to be working. So, fingers crossed we'll be doing well there. See, the Communist joins us. See, it is always good to have you. Thanks for all your support on Twitter.com. And yes, indeed, I was called a libtard today. It was a first. This is the first time this has happened to me. And frankly, it feels like, you know, they say you never forget your first time. And I know I'll never forget mine. So, thanks for being here, buddy. Captain Pugwash, thank you for the kind words. Nuclear armaments are POG, champ, says Card Triggered. Well, depends on what you think nuclear armaments have done for the world. Nuclear armaments have cost hundreds of thousands of lives, not just in the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but in all the radioactive fallout, all the cancer, all the leukemia, all the early onset death that resulted from decades of nuclear testing. But, you know, you could still probably tally all of that up in the worst possible case and come to the conclusion that nuclear weapons have nevertheless saved more lives than they've cost, given that nuclear weapons, I might argue, are the only reason we haven't had another major war between the leading industrialized powers of the world, which certainly would have cost millions of lives rather than hundreds of thousands. So, it's a tough question to answer whether nuclear armaments are PogChamp or not. But I appreciate the comment. I imagine you didn't expect a response like that. Johan says, "What's your favorite firearm?" Well, I don't know that I have, I'm not too, I'm not too much of a gunslinger, apart from these, of course. But I would say that of all the firearms, the M1911 seems like the most attractive to me. Rugged, hardy, good-looking gun, and a classic, which, of course, I always appreciate. So if I had a favorite firearm, I would guess that would be it. Eloquent Boots says, I saw some rumors on the Twitters that many people were plotting against you, Bastiat. I'm thankful that you are well trained in self-defense. Well, it's interesting you say that, because there's a fella who really was plotting against me. It was actually kind of spooky. This fella, let's see here. Holy moly. M. Pritchard, thank you so much. I've been enjoying your memes on Twitter. Glad to see you streaming. Thank you for that, my friend. I thank you for the kind words, and thank you for subscribing now with Prime Game for 3 months. Very cool. We've got a hype train going, folks. So if you'd like to get some exclusive hype train emotes, well, hey, now's the time to subscribe, and of course, it really helps us grow the channel. So thank you for that. So I think the reference here that Opossum is making. Hey. Thank you so much, JR Jam. Now for 14 months, incredible. Thank you so much, buddy. Good to have you here. Speed Force Punk says, good to see you survived your encounter with Bad Empanada. Well, I'll tell you, let me see if I've got this here. I didn't really know who Bad Empanada was until this bit here where he, was wishing my death and all that. So that was kind of rough, but I gotta say, don't do that on Twitter, folks, because this is where it gets you. So don't wish death to people on Twitter. They will delete your account. Emin Lotus says, so it's confirmed now, Trump is gone? As confirmed as it can be prior to him actually leaving the White House. And of course, it's been like that for a little while. So we'll see. I don't think, though, that I think it's well and truly done. The only route he's got left, as far as I can see, is for the state legislatures of, I believe, more than one state. And there's the Discord, Louis. I think more than one state would have to do this. If the state legislatures decided to not to certify the election, or rather to try and use their power to appoint electors to override the results of the election, there is some argument that the state legislatures could do that, and that they wouldn't need the approval of the governors in the state to do that. It's a complex argument that I don't want to give off the cuff, but basically the idea, kind of the last gasp of Trump's hope to remain in office, is a movement to try and get state legislatures to say, basically, the results of our elections were compromised, and therefore we are either withdrawing our electors from the Electoral College, or we are giving them to President Trump. That's a real long shot. That's the kind of thing that, if it went to the Supreme Court, it would make Bush v. Gore. I know we were talking about nuclear weapons earlier. A decision to allow that strategy to work would be... compared to Bush v. Gore, that would make Bush v. Gore look like children's firecrackers. That's how big a disastrous nuclear blast that decision would be to our democracy. At that point, all the fever dreams about political violence might have some currency. If that happened, oof, that would be bad. But that being said, see, the communist says all the swing states have certified, and the PA and Arizona can't do the state legislature flips. Hey, I hope so. I haven't really checked on that in the last couple of days, but that's good. If true, and I have no reason to doubt you, that sounds good. I saw all the stuff about certifying, but I forget at which point in the process the state legislatures can come on in. I thought they could do it prior to the certification, or prior to the meeting of the Electoral College. I thought they could exercise that power, but not 100%. So, yeah, it's Emin Lotus says the Kraken, of which kind of brain drain seeming attorney lady was talking about. No, that's a lawsuit where they're alleging fraud, and the state legislature route wouldn't require anybody to prove fraud. The state legislature would just have to, I guess, allege it and then exercise their power. So I question the constitutionality of that. But, you know, that's basically the last conceivable straw, and I don't think it's conceivable. So, and if it is, you know, I guess arm up, because that would be that would light the country literally on fire. You know, like I would be worried about that. I mean, I wouldn't want to engage in any violence, but I would be terrified that violence would happen. And no, See the Communist is not the alt of any redacted streamers. So, I mean, terrifying stuff. Okay. Logan 0909 says Femboy sub goal. Well, I don't know that we have a Femboy sub goal, but subscribers, Femboy or not, are always welcome to subscribe. Looks like we are almost done. We've got 30 seconds left on the hype train, so hey, if you'd like to subscribe, now would be a great time. Okay. Anyway, Damage Cortex. It's a little complex, but I question the constitutionality of a state being able to override an election so blatantly after it's happened. So, okay. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, are you going to play Draga ever? I can't say I know what Draga is, but hey, you know, maybe we'll check it out someday. All right. Okay. So, with that, let's see here. Whoa, Yaffa, you got me. Good timing. Okay. So let's see here. Is my sub not going to show up? Holy moly! I guess you must have subbed right during the hype train conclusion. Well, let me say this, Dr. Socialism. Thank you for subscribing. I really appreciate that. Let's see. Was that for 3 months now? Incredible. Thank you so much. You broke the system, as I suppose socialists sometimes aspire to do. Congratulations all the same. And thank you very much. All right. Johan says, via the Bucks, I would support you. Been rough, bud. Also, what's your opinion on legalizing steroids? It would help me. Well, I'll say this. First of all, I appreciate everybody's support. I know these are tough times, so please do not ever feel guilty about it. But I do appreciate it, of course. Thank you, Dr. Socialism, for subscribing. Now for 3 months, I do appreciate that. Emma Lotus says, aren't socialists more reformist than revolutionary? It seems to depend on the brand of socialists you're talking to. You know, but I thought there's some socialism involved, or sorry, some revolutionary tendency, I guess. But I guess if you're a democratic socialist, I imagine you don't think there's a revolution. Look, it was a pun. You know, I'm trying to make a pun here. Break the system, revolution. You know, Doc Socialism says, do a striptease or I refund. If that's what you think capitalism is, then I understand why you would be a doctor in socialism, my friend. Okay. All right. Now, what is the lib equivalent to theory? I don't know, reading Vox.com, subbing to the neoliberal project, read theory. Oh, maybe reading Why Nations Fail. Although I must confess, I haven't read that yet. So I'm you know, like many socialists, not so hot on theory. All right. I'll have to get better on that. Bastiat sleeps. Yes, true. But anyway, as far as legalizing steroids goes, and then we're going to hop into the Blue Discord, Blue Politics server, I guess I don't really have an issue with that. I'm not an expert on steroids, but I don't really have an issue with them being legal any more than any other illicit drug. But everything I've ever seen with respect to taking steroids for, you know, like athletic reasons, seems like very short-term gain for very long-term pain. So I certainly wouldn't do it or endorse it. But that to me doesn't seem like an argument for making it illegal and arresting you for doing it. That's a different issue entirely. All right. Okay. Let's see. Oh, God. Oh, man. Okay. So, with that, we are going to put the music on pause for a minute here. Johan says, it would help me so much since I get my powdered stuff from China, not sketchy at all. LMAO. Look, friend. don't do it if you possibly can help it. It's those are bad for you. All right. I was asking my personal. Let's see. I had a personal trainer. And I was asking her, hey, what's the word on steroids? Bad or worse? Terrible. How bad are they? And she was just telling me, look, they make you bald, they shrink your wiener and your balls, and it's just no thanks. All right, no thanks. Okay. All right, that's not the kind of content you come here for, I imagine. But you've been in the game. You've minimized all the sides. Hey, I hope you have. But I have never heard a story about steroids that ends well. But hey, I do believe it is your life, and you ought to be free to make those decisions. Although I would encourage everybody, generally speaking, to follow the law. Okay, with that, we are hopping on into the Bastiat AMA here. Let me turn things up here a bit. Get this Blue Politics server here up. Okay. And thoughts on skinny ties? They are cool sometimes, but I like my ties nice and thick with 3 C's. All right.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing pretty well. It's good to be here tonight.
Excellent.
All right, folks. So we are here on the Blue Politics Discord server. I dropped a link to it in my tweet on Twitter.com. If you want to check it out, if you want to hop in, I imagine they welcome all kinds of wonderful new people. Check it out, and you can hop in and ask a question if you're so inclined. I'm not sure how long we're going, but I'm happy to go for as long as you all want to go. So, yeah, I'm happy to start whenever you guys are ready.
We can start now. So our first question is,
can I
what are your
say a little something about myself first?
Oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay. So my name that I stream under here is Bastiat.
Bad Hoss Simra just subscribed.
I stream
Good luck
on.
tonight.
Thanks for that, Bad Hoss. I appreciate that subscription. Very cool. I stream on Twitch.tv under the name Bastiat. I self-identify as a neoliberal. I tend to argue for personal liberty, free markets, free movement of people, strong military alliances, and the Constitution. And generally speaking, since I imagine this question will come up at least once or twice, I think in the simplest sense of a neoliberal as somebody who is, I suppose, a libertarian mugged by reality. That is to say, somebody who believes in individual freedom but recognizes that, one, the state needs to have the capacity to do the things that the state is established to do, and that we need pragmatic policies of all sorts to really make our freedom tangible, and to have a government that works rather than a government that does not work. So, yeah, with that, happy to get going.
All right, thank you. So our first question today is, what are your thoughts on qualified immunity?
Okay, so qualified immunity is the policy by which police in the United States, generally speaking, are protected from. Let me see if I've got this right here. Let me make sure I've got this right. I believe it's just yes. Okay. And it's not just police. That's what I wanted to check. Legal principle that grants government officials performing discretionary functions immunity from civil suits unless the plaintiff shows that the official violated clearly established statutory or constitutional rights of which a reasonable person would have known. And in practice, this seems to have turned into a practice by which, if and hold on, let me turn off. Let's see. I'm not sure how I turn off the beeps whenever somebody joins, but maybe somebody can let me know how to do that.
Oh, you just entered to streamer mode.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Let me do that. Sorry for the boomer tier tech here, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Okay. Think streamer mode. Okay, well, I'll figure this out at some point. But oh, there it is. Okay, great. Sorry. Okay, so the problem with qualified immunity is that it protects police from being from being sued when they do something wrong or when they violate somebody's rights, unless they have already been successfully sued for violating somebody's rights, which is pretty terrible because there are innumerable new ways that our rights as citizens can be violated. This is, as far as I know, a judicially created doctrine, so it could be undone by Congress or, I guess, by the Supreme Court if it wanted to go back on its precedent. The precedent only dates back, I believe, to the 1980s, so there's no reason it has to stick around forever. In fact, let me double check that. Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, 1967. In a case called Pearson v. Ray. It was enacted originally with the rationale protecting law enforcement officials from frivolous lawsuits and financial liability in cases where they acted in good faith in unclear legal situations. But, in a case of excessive force or deadly force used by the police, look, the citizen has to have a means to push back. And if they can't push back in court, they basically got nothing. So I think it's a bad doctrine that ought to be undone.
All right. The next question is, as an attorney, what was your toughest case?
Let's see. Toughest case. Well, let's see. In terms of naming cases that I guess I don't want to name anything that could be used to identify me. But in terms of toughest cases, let's see. I work in energy, particularly in natural gas and electricity. And I would say that the toughest cases that I have always, the toughest opponent that I have run into in every time I run into them is the local electrical utility. Not necessarily local, but your monopoly electricity provider. So, like for example, if you lived in Florida, in Miami, you would be served by Florida Power and Light, which is a part of NextEra Energy, which I believe is now the country's largest utility. And every time I have been on the other side of a table from either them or one of the other utilities in the country, they are always fierce and dogged opponents. Their resources are effectively unlimited. Their political will, they have deep connections in every political system in which they operate. So yeah, local electricity monopolies are always the toughest opponents. And I would say at the toughest case I ever dealt with involving one of those was a case I did where I basically was challenging the authority of a local government to start its own competing utility. That was pretty tough because in that situation, multiple levels of government were opposed to basically the competitive market that we were trying to protect. They were trying to start a utility, and a government created utility competing with private utilities is terribly unfair, since the government utility can just socialize its losses onto taxpayers, and of course the private utility, if it goes belly up, it goes belly up. So kind of unfair competition there. So that was a pretty tough case, although we did prevail. But yeah, in any cases involving electric utilities or utility monopolies, those are tough. So.
Okay, so my next question is, do you think Biden will bring positive changes to America?
Yeah, I think so, and I think so even if he doesn't have the Senate. The Senate will make it much, will mean he can do a lot more. I think without a doubt, his options will be very limited if he doesn't have the Senate. But I think even in the worst case where we lose, and I say we, I mean I suppose liberals or people who want the Democrats to win the Georgia Senate races and runoffs, and therefore have a majority in the Senate, the House, and the presidency. Have control of the presidency. For people who want all of those, that's who I'm talking about when I say we. The Senate, makes it possible to do all kinds of meaningful reform. So, if he gets the Senate, unquestionably, without a doubt. And I mean, the first thing I think they'll do will be some meaningful, after a COVID relief package of some kind. The first thing I think they'll do is some kind of voting rights protection or reform to ensure that a lot of this gamesmanship and nonsense with respect to trying to purge voters from the voting rolls and keep people from voting, make it harder for people to vote. A good federal law protecting people's ability to vote and to vote more easily will be, I think, one of the quickest improvements, because it would help Democrats so much, right? And in the process, it would be, I think, an objectively good thing. Everybody, our right to vote is how we push back, one of the ways we push back against government. So it's important that we all have the ability to vote as far as possible, to me. Beyond that, though, even if Biden doesn't have the Senate, I think that not only to the extent any kind of bipartisan legislation is possible, Joe Biden seems to be the kind of deal worker who might be able to work those kinds of deals. Mitch McConnell is a pretty miserable fella in terms of any kind of legislation. But again, to the extent anything is possible with him, I think Biden is probably the one to do it. And then even if nothing is possible as a result of Republican control of the Senate, the control over the executive agencies that Joe Biden will have will be, will still allow for some positive change, rolling back a lot of the draconian things that President Trump has done on immigration, hopefully doing better than the Obama administration did on immigration enforcement, which is to say, I think, liberalizing it. So that would be one area that the president, even without the Senate, could, I think, do some good on. And then I think the area where the president traditionally has the most discretion, foreign policy, Joe Biden will be able to do a lot of good stuff. I think he'll be able to dial back the war in Yemen, which he's stated that he wants to do. And he'll be able to, I think, much more importantly than anything in the Middle East, focus on reestablishing and shoring up our alliances in Europe and East Asia, recommitting us to Europe, to a joint defense of Europe with NATO, and joint defense of East Asia with our South Korean, Japanese, and Taiwanese allies, among others. So I think that he'll be able to make some positive change any way you slice it. But of course, the most important thing to max out that positive change potential will be winning the Senate race in Georgia. There's nothing, as far as I can see, that is more important than that in American politics right now. And for anybody in here who is a Destiny viewer or a Destiny watcher, or just likes the Destiny community on Twitch, he's working on getting together people to do canvassing for the Georgia Senate race, and I think maybe voter registration. So if you're interested, check out his community. He's got something going on there, and you definitely want to check that out. Again, as far as I can see, literally nothing more important in American politics for the next month and change than the Georgia Senate race, assuming the president doesn't try and do anything wacky to hold on to power.
Our next question is, what are your thoughts on the weak case Wickard v. Filburn?
Okay, Wickard v. Filburn is, I believe, the case in which the Commerce Clause is really really kneecapped. Let me make sure I've got the right case here. Wickard v. Filburn. Okay, yeah, Wickard v. Filburn dramatically increases the regulatory power of the U.S. government. This was during the war, World War II. I shouldn't say the war, like we all know which war I'm talking about. But Wickard v. Filburn dramatically increases the regulatory power of the federal government, one of the farthest reaching cases of the New Deal, and the holding was... let's see, I think I remember some of this. Yes, okay. So this was a case that came down to the issue, this was about the growth of grain on a farm. And let me read just the description here for folks to think about. An Ohio farmer, Roscoe Filburn, was growing wheat to feed animals on his own farm. The U.S. government established limits on wheat production based on the acreage owned by a farmer to stabilize wheat prices and supplies. Filburn grew more than was permitted and so was ordered to pay a penalty. In response, he said that because his wheat was not sold, it could not be regulated as commerce, let alone interstate commerce, described in the Constitution as, quote, commerce, ... among the several states. The Supreme Court disagreed. Whether the subject of the regulation in question was production, consumption, or marketing, therefore, not material for purposes of deciding the question of federal power before us. Even if the appellee, that is to say the farmer's activity, is local, and even though it may not be regarded as commerce, it may still, whatever its nature, be reached by Congress. That is to say, Congress may regulate it if it exerts a substantial economic effect on interstate commerce, and this irrespective of whether such effect is what might at some earlier time have been defined as direct or indirect. So, that may seem like a bunch of gobbledygook, but here's why Wickard v. Filburn is important. If you stretch the Commerce Clause in the Constitution to mean that you can regulate, that the federal government, that is, can regulate even the growth of food on your property not intended for anything other than personal consumption, you are giving the federal government an enormous amount of power. And sure enough, Wickard v. Filburn is the beginning of a series of cases that use the Commerce Clause to regulate a wide berth of activity in the United States. For example, let's see. Now there may be folks listening to this who don't like this, right? I mean, I, for example, am very skeptical of the notion of whether the Commerce Clause should be read in this fashion. That seems to be way beyond what the framers of the Constitution certainly intended with respect to the notion of regulating commerce among the several states. The decision basically concludes that anything that might even impact tangentially interstate commerce, that's something that Congress can regulate. That's a wide grant of power. That power has been used in ways that most people would agree with. For example, there's a case called Heart of, let me see if I've got this one right. I believe it's Heart of Atlanta. I don't know who the other party is. Heart of Atlanta. Yeah, Heart of Atlanta Motel v. United States. In that case, Congress used the Commerce Clause. The Commerce Clause, as expanded in part by Wickard v. Filburn, to enact the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which prohibited racial discrimination in public accommodations. And the argument was, in effect, that all the protests and all of the, basically uproarious, activity that goes along with the civil rights protest can harm interstate commerce, and so therefore it is in the interest of the federal government. It is therefore the right of Congress to force private business to integrate, basically because segregated facilities have a deleterious effect on interstate commerce. Now, that is a decision that I think virtually everybody likes, right? But, it is nevertheless based on an expansion of the reading of the Commerce Clause, right? That kind of reading of the Commerce Clause, therefore, allows the federal government to do some good things. And arguably, it also allows, I don't think it's arguable actually, it allows the federal government to do some bad things because it grants the federal government so much authority. I would argue that original expansion of authority in the Wickard case, for example, it seems to me like that's a very egregious expansion power to say that a farmer can't grow food on his own property to feed himself, right? I mean, it's a serious infringement of individual freedom. There was a case, I believe, called U.S. v. Lopez in the mid-1990s. Let me look that up. I like to double check what I'm talking about whenever possible. Yes, U.S. v. Lopez that also concerned the Commerce Clause, and there was a federal law that prohibited possession of a handgun near a school. And this law was justified using the Commerce Clause as expanded by Wickard v. Filburn in a long succession of cases. The Supreme Court in that case concluded that possession of a handgun near a school is not an economic activity, has no substantial effect on interstate commerce, and therefore cannot be regulated by Congress. So, long story short, I think it's good that Congress has the power to the power to make policy, but many readings of the Commerce Clause after Wickard v. Filburn were quite tortured and I think deleterious to individual freedom, so I'm glad that the Supreme Court no longer gives Congress a blank check when it comes to the Commerce Clause.
Our next question from the users is: should Roe v. Wade be overturned?
Oh man, that's a question. All right, let me have a sip here. All right, so As far as as far as that goes, I guess there's a lot to think about with respect to that question of should Roe v. Wade be overturned. I guess the first question is, how do I personally feel about abortion, right? Like, which is, I imagine, one of the first calls of the question. So let me disclose, first of all, what I think about abortion. I think abortion is the taking of a human life. And I do not, I do not think you can easily say, well, you see, I think it is the taking of a human life, but of course you may not, and therefore, you do as you do, and I do as I do. That is a good genial position to have in basic conversation, but I don't think that's a state can't consistently hold that position. If you view a fetus as a person, then the state has to protect it, right? If you don't, then of course you don't. But I think that to me is the only consistent position that I can hold, that I've seen make sense, is that life begins at conception, and therefore it's a person, and the state has an interest in protecting it. Now that being said, I also think that the response that most people who feel that way have of let's ban abortion is self-defeating, is never going to happen, is pointless, and as far as I can see, the only time it's ever meaningfully happened is in communist Romania under the Ceausescu dictatorship, and that led to the most egregious infringements of individual freedom, some of the most egregious infringements of individual freedom that I'm aware of. They were, to enforce this law, they were, for example, checking women's, they had doctors at factories checking female employees' genitalia, giving them general exams to figure out whether they were pregnant or not, to ensure that they weren't getting abortions. A lot of draconian, weird stuff. So, as far as that goes, I think that a ban is a bad idea. And instead, what I would like to do is I would like to address the causes of abortion at their root, and they are overwhelmingly financial. I believe it's something on the order of 50 to 60%, for example, of all abortions are the result of financial pressures. So I think if there were state programs designed at alleviating those financial pressures, abortion would really decline. And it is also worth noting that abortion has declined in the United States year after year for quite a long time. In fact, in the United States, let me see if I can find this. I believe we have now fewer abortions per year in the United States than... Yes, in fact, we have fewer abortions per year than we've had... sorry, I want to check this. In 2016, the last year I see data for, there were 623,000 abortions. In 1973, the year after Roe v. Wade, there were 615,000 abortions. 1974, 763,000 abortions. So the abortion rate has declined now year after year for, it looks like, the past 20 years. And, I think that's a good thing by any measure. So not only is the rate of abortion going down naturally, but I think if we really want to bring it down, what we should do is we should have programs in place that will make it easier for people to, to raise children and not have to, not feel like they need to have abortions as a result of financial pressures. So I would have, maybe enhanced child tax credits or a UBI for children as proposed, I believe, by Michael Bennet and Mitt Romney recently. Things like that. An abortion ban, I think, is the kind of thing you would do only at the point where abortion was already very, very rare. And even then, it's really hard to imagine what it would look like in practice because, I could, for example, never accede to saying, well, abortion in every circumstance is illegal. Like what about a rape? A rape is clearly tail the tape. No comments like that. A rape is clearly, you didn't consent. You cannot be asked to engage in you can't be asked to engage in a pregnancy as a result of activity that you didn't consent to. So certainly in that case, that has to be up to you. Abortion certainly has to be allowed. Well, what about other questions? Like, for example, abortion for health reasons, right? Well, that's another issue where it would be it's thoroughly subjective, like, is this really life or death? Or is this a very elective abortion? Those are really difficult questions that I, for one, am not particularly inclined to trust a state legislature to properly answer. So I'm very skeptical about what an abortion ban could ever look like in any meaningful fashion. But I do certainly leave the door open for it at some point if we did all these other things, because I do nevertheless view abortion as the taking of a human life. So that's my personal feeling on abortion. That's and also I did see somebody in my chat asked, is Plan B murder? No, because there's no conception with Plan B, so therefore there's no taking of a human life. As for Roe v. Wade, let me go into that separately. Roe v. Wade is in terms of whether a case should be repealed. I guess it depends on. Now that I've given you my personal feelings on abortion, and I guess if I was making the decision purely based on my personal feelings, then I would say yes at some point. If, on the other hand, you're saying, well, what about stare decisis, right? I mean, Roe v. Wade has been the law of the land now for almost 50 years. 50 years is a very long time. There's a very substantial, what we would call, a reliance interest on that decision. Several cases have been, the Supreme Court has had the chance to overturn Roe v. Wade several times now, and it has not. So after 50 years of a decision in place that has been upheld time and time and time and time again, there's a good argument to be made that, look, it's been on the books for a very long time. There's a substantial reliance interest on it. There's no argument really, You can't just take a decision and conclude, well, I know we have this long history of 50 years of cases upholding this decision, but today it's wrong. No, so purely from like a stare decisis point of view, at this point, it's been the law for 50 years. That being said, stare decisis is not ironclad. A bad decision certainly can be overruled down the line. Nobody would try and apply stare decisis, for example, to Dred Scott v. Sanford or to Plessy versus Ferguson, the segregation case. But that is an important thing to consider. Beyond that, I guess you might also think about abortion from a federalist type perspective. Roe v. Wade ensures the availability of abortion as a constitutional right everywhere in the country. And you might conclude that what that did was take away the ability for people to, either outlaw or allow abortion democratically through the legislative process, which I have no doubt contributed somewhat to the kind of hostility of the issue. From a federalist perspective, if you think states should be able to make decisions locally and that abortion should be something decided democratically, then Roe v. Wade is a problem, right? So that's one. Yeah, so that's and then there is a lot of criticism of the decision itself. Some people say that the Roe v. Wade decision was sort of just derived out of whole cloth, that its basis in constitutional law is pretty thin. The trimester framework that Justice Blackmun devised is pretty arbitrary. It's a very neat formula to say in the first trimester the state has no interest, in the second trimester the state has some interest, and in the third trimester the state has a lot of interest in human life. But it's pretty subjective. It's not entirely clear where it comes from. I'd say so. I don't know that it was. I wouldn't have made that decision. I wouldn't have written that decision. I probably wouldn't have. I wouldn't have acceded to that decision. I think probably the better thing to have done would be to let it be done democratically. And ultimately, I would, if it were up to me, I'd scrap it, because ultimately I do think that abortion is the taking of a human life. But if I were, the king and able to do everything I wanted to do, I wouldn't do that until I had programs in place that would actually give people options like, financial resources. Because it seems to be the case from everything I've seen. The research for example, from the Guttmacher Institute, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, that says that 50 to 75% of abortions are the result of financial reasons. If you give people the financial wherewithal to have children, make it easier for them, I think that would go a long way to resolving abortion rather than trying to institute bans. But I couldn't defend Roe v. Wade if somebody asked me to do it.
Oh, speaking of those financial plans, you mentioned Bennett's child UBI plan.
Yeah.
Do you support a UBI in general or a negative income tax?
I suppose that the negative income tax is probably the more doable of the two, and so in that sense, probably I don't know that it's hard to say which one I like better. The negative income tax, I suppose I like better in the sense that, it's I guess purely for reasons of expediency. It would be easier to have a program that gives people on the lower end of society more money. It would be easier to get that program than literally universal basic income. So for me, it's hard to say that, I guess I would say this. I traditionally talk about universal basic income. I don't see any problems with the universal basic income because ultimately anybody, people say, for example, should Jeff Bezos get a universal basic income? Well, Jeff Bezos is going to be paying a lot more in taxes than he's going to be getting in his $1,000 a month. So, if you're worried about it from that perspective, it's not a problem. What about people, middle-class people, for example, have needs too, it's not just poor people who have needs, and I guess. So, I don't really see the argument against a universal basic income if you're already into this kind of transfer program. The only argument I can really see that makes a negative income tax better is that it's probably more doable because it requires less money because fewer people are getting checks. But in the long run, I think anybody who supports one probably supports the other as a policy objective, Yeah.
You also mentioned in the Roe v. Wade in section, you mentioned Federalist perspectives.
Yeah.
Is originalism a good method of judicial interpretation?
Well, I guess it would. I guess it depends on how you do your originalism. As far as originalism goes, I guess the basic idea seems to be this. Originalism. By the way, I just want to say I apologize for talking for what seemed like an hour about Roe v. Wade there, but given the nature of the issue and how charged an issue is, I really try to cover all the bases as possible. So that's just so everybody knows. That's why I went on for a very long time about that, because I think that's important. Otherwise, that subject is always a shouting match. Otherwise, okay. Let's see. I apologize. I'm saying federalism and originalism. Okay. So originalism is the idea that the Constitution has a meaning, and I guess any law, but we typically talk about constitutional interpretation, that the Constitution has a meaning, and that meaning cannot change over time, right? The only way to change it over time is to amend the Constitution or to amend a law or whatever, you know what I mean? Now, I think there is something really attractive about this. If you view the Constitution as unchanging, well, I think that's a good thing, because it means that you can change, unchanging in terms of it doesn't change without being amended, right? That means, I think, a good thing with respect to democratic, that's a good thing for democracy, because that means that when laws are enacted, they are not changed except by the people, right? The problem is, as far as originalism goes, that you can imagine a situation where somebody perhaps uses originalist arguments to try and change what the law means. I suppose you might find somebody who tries to use an originalist argument to undercut what is otherwise a very well-established precedent in American law. That can be a problem, or who might use originalism to try and gosh, what was I going to say here? Who might use originalism to gosh, let's see. I think I apologize. I think I lost my train of thought here. Here's the problem with it. Yeah, originalism, all well and good, but the Constitution is super hard to amend. You know, the last time we amended the Constitution was in, I think, 1992, and the amendment in question was the one that deals with that says that basically an election has to happen before Congress can get a pay raise. Okay, well that's that is, say if Congress votes a pay raise, it can't take effect until the next election, right? That's not a very controversial amendment. That's pretty it's pretty basic popular stuff. But when it comes to doing anything remotely controversial, the Constitution is super hard to amend. So if I say, well, you see, originalism, you can very easily come back and say, yes, well, the Constitution is super damn hard to amend. So if I can't do it in court, I'm basically out of luck. I don't think that's an argument, I guess, against originalism, but it is, I think, a reason to perhaps understand why there is a lot of frustration with it. Because ultimately, if you view the Constitution as having a fixed meaning, and you can only change it by amending the Constitution through a democratic election, well, the Constitution basically isn't changing. At least, not in an era of polarization like we've got today. Nevertheless, I can't see I think it's a consistent way to read the Constitution. Originalism, textualism. The one thing I will say, though, is I don't know how far you can really take originalism. Like, if you view, sorry about that. If you view, Justice Gorsuch recently authored an opinion on a case dealing with discrimination against LGBTQ people in the workplace. And the decision basically found that, I think it was the Civil Rights Act of 1964, maybe 1965, prohibited this kind of discrimination because it prohibited discrimination on the basis of sex. Well, certainly discrimination, I think his reasoning is very sound. Certainly discrimination against a gay person is discrimination against them on the basis of sex. Because you disagree, you are discriminating against them because you don't think their sexual preference lines up with what it should be. That is to say, you have a problem with their idea of what sex should mean, right? It is a discrimination against them on the basis of sex. I am sure that nobody, or almost nobody, in 1964, 1965 was thinking that the Civil Rights Act would protect trans people or probably even gay people. In fact, I remember hearing the part of the story behind the passage of the Civil Rights Act was, well, I don't want to go into the story too far, but in effect, a very sexist legislator was involved. And Justice Gorsuch, I believe, talks about this in the opinion to make clear that, look, it doesn't, it doesn't matter what the legislature wanted, right? What matters is the text, right? This legislator involved was probably super sexist. Doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter what his original intent was because the text is so clear here. The text has to mean what it means, right? So you can argue that originalism can conflict with textualism as well. And I guess, the thing about the Constitution is that, because the words are much older, we have to take an originalist perspective in trying to figure out what they mean, because in our common parlance, they just don't mean, many of those words just don't mean today what they meant at the time. But certainly originalism can come up against textualism, and there can be cases like Justice Gorsuch's case where textualism has to prevail. And just to be clear, textualism is when you're making a decision based purely on the ordinary plain meaning of the text, as opposed to looking back in time and trying to figure out, well, did the common law in England cover this situation? And you're trying to figure out what words mean. So I'm going to try and do a little better with respect to these rambling answers, but I'm trying to cover an issue thoroughly here.
All right. So, have you ever changed your ideology drastically on a certain issue throughout the years?
Yes, I would say so. Immigration, I am very much now for effectively unlimited immigration to the United States. And in the past, I thought immigration was bad, and that Americans should get preference first and foremost with jobs and things like that. And now it is my opinion that those issues, or that is that's a false dichotomy. Growth is not zero sum, right? When immigrants come to the United States and prosper, that creates more opportunities even than already existed for people who are already in the country. Now, one of the reasons I think a universal basic income or a negative income tax would be good is that there are always people who are displaced in the short term when it comes to trade or immigration, and those people should not be forgotten or left behind. But their individual bad effects should not be used as an argument against the overall massively positive effects of free trade and open immigration, things like that. But that's probably my biggest change is going from immigration bad to immigration really good.
With the more conservative judges being appointed, do you think in the next 4 years, or maybe even the next 8, that the Supreme Court will have the opportunity to overturn Obergefell, I think is how you pronounce it, versus
Obergefell?
Hodge?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think in the United States, LGBTQ marriage has gained support since 2012? 2014.
Yeah, LGBTQ marriage certainly seems to have gained support. In fact, it's pretty inspiring how quickly it went from being something that even President Obama wouldn't come out for in support of during, I think, his first run, to being something that the Supreme Court absolutely, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of. I'm personally not, I don't really have a concern about Obergefell v. Hodges being repealed. I would say Roe v. Wade is probably, probably rests on shakier ground than that, in the sense of, the very basic, I think, equal protection arguments in favor of saying, if one group of people can get married, why can't another group of people get married? That seems like a much, it has, I guess, less precedent in the sense that it's a newer decision, but that feels like a much more defensible decision. So that seems, I don't know, I'm not so concerned about that being overruled. I would be much more concerned, if I were, pro-choice, I would be much more concerned about Roe v. Wade than Obergefell. But yeah, I think support for gay marriage also is it seems to be much higher than for abortion, which seems to have been consistently split. Let me check this here. Public support for abortion. Let's see. Remains as high as it has been in 2 decades of polling, according to never mind. 61% think abortion should be legal in all or most cases. 38% say illegal in all or most cases. I wonder what public support for same-sex marriage is. 63%. So actually, never mind. I was wrong. Public support is actually very, very close. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe that doesn't. It's actually just about the same, according to the Pew Forum. So Pew Research Center, like literally the same, 61% for both. So. I was wrong on that notion that same-sex marriage is more popular than abortion. But I don't know. Abortion has been a target for decades. I think gay marriage is a pretty secondary target.
Okay, so Oregon just decriminalized small amounts of several illegal drugs. Are you a fan of this approach?
Yes, I think all the drugs should be legalized.
All right, so do you see a practical path towards carbon neutrality in the United States before 2050? And if so, what sets of policies do you believe best facilitates this?
Oh man, that's tough. Well, so I'll say this. First of all, what I do as a fossil fuel attorney is I work in natural gas, and I would say that a good thing toward that end would be. And by the way, for everybody in my chat who's asking questions, I will get to your questions after we finish here tonight with Blue Politics. So, I can't answer them now. Answering the blue politics ones, but just to let you know. Okay. So I think first of all, natural gas has to replace coal. That's natural gas properly regulated. One thing that the Biden administration will be able to do, for example, is to reestablish good regulations on natural gas emissions, controlling that. That'll be one good thing. Getting coal gone for good. Another thing will be to implement more solar and renewables and wind and nuclear energy as far as possible. Nuclear seems to be a lot harder for regulatory reasons, for cost reasons. It just seems like every time nuclear power plants are built or incentivized to be built in the United States, it is much more difficult. It is much more expensive to do than anybody initially thinks it'll be. That seems to be primarily for human reasons rather than limitations of the technology. But nevertheless, it is what it is. I am less concerned about the nuclear waste issue because, again, if you believe in climate change, the risks of climate change are much higher than the risks of nuclear waste, as far as I can see. And they do take a lot of time to build too. Nuclear waste though seems to be the least of the issues there to me. The bigger issue seems to be cost and time.
All right.
Beyond that, carbon taxes. But I know that one thing that I'm very curious about is I don't know how far we can go with a lot of the stuff that I've said to really deal. Like, I don't know if all of that is enough to deal with climate change. So I guess then you get into some tough questions like, is it how much economic growth do you start to ask people to sacrifice in exchange for reducing carbon emissions? Or what do you do if, the United States is only 15% of, I believe, 15% of carbon emissions? What do you do if, even in the ideal situation that the United States, and I don't know what Europe is, but let's imagine the rest of the industrialized world is another, 25% of carbon emissions. That's just a figure I'm making up. But, suppose all the rich countries that the United States is allied to, plus the United States, suppose we're half of the carbon emissions of the world. I think a vast overstatement, but suppose we were. That's still only half, right? What are we doing with the rest of the world? What if what if the rest of the countries of the world don't cut back, right? What if they don't go along because their people have ambitions and dreams too, and the people of India and the people of China don't live in poverty any more than the people of the United States do. And of course, the United States and Europe and the rest of the developed world has been dropping carbon or pumping carbon into the atmosphere for a much longer time than the people of China or India have. So is it fair even to ask them to cut back at all? So long story short, I think we also have to look at programs to incentivize, basically to pay these countries to build cleaner energy. And I think we also have to look at some forms of what I guess you might call carbon capture. Basically devices that are going to be designed, ideally powered by clean energy, but designed to suck carbon out of the sky. Other solutions like that, because I don't think cutbacks, I don't think clean energy in the United States, I don't think all of that, even if properly done, will be enough. And in the final analysis, I do hope somebody is thinking about what geoengineering would look like, because not only might it come down to that, but if it does, one of the disturbing things about geoengineering is that there are many geoengineering ideas. And just to be clear, what I'm talking about when I say geoengineering is ideas by which we might alter the Earth's climate intentionally. There's a great book called Super Freakonomics, where the author talks about how geoengineering is something that might be within the reach of 1 or 2 billionaires to do all on their own, of their own initiative. So I hope that there are people thinking about what geoengineering might look like, so that if it comes down to that, or if somebody actually does it, I just hope there's some good science behind it. Because for example, if China decided, we're going to start seasoning. I believe one of the ideas is we're going to seed silver nitrate into the upper atmosphere because the effects of climate change are just so so dramatic on our country that we can't just wait for you guys to cut back. They could do it, and there's really nothing we could do about it. We're not. Sometimes the issue comes up of is it morally just to invade a country if they refuse to cut back on their carbon emissions? I mean, it's probably never going to happen. So a country that is determined to do one of these geoengineering things, probably could. So I guess, long story short, multilateral domestic subsidies at home for clean energy, multilateral agreements to make it easier for other countries, particularly developing countries, to get money from rich countries to build more clean energy. And then in the final analysis, also investing in carbon capture technology, and as the final back burner, thinking seriously about geoengineering and experimenting, and not going down the road of saying we're not going to look at this because looking at this will disincentivize. I don't think that's true. But yeah, that's the long and short of it.
Okay, so you mentioned potentially invading countries for their if they don't follow, carbon control precautions.
Just to be clear, I'm not endorsing that, but that is a question that has come up when people say, "Well, what do you do if other countries don't follow their, And it's kind of a meme question, given that the United States right now is the one that is outside of the Paris Accords and all that. But I don't endorse that though.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on military spending in general?
I have no problem with the amount of money that the United States spends on the military, generally speaking, and I would prefer to have my taxes raised than my defense budget cut.
All right. So if testing shows a COVID vaccine to be safe, would you support making the vaccine mandatory?
No more, I guess, than we make vaccines mandatory for children, which is to say that I believe generally we don't require you to get one just because you are a person who is alive, but if you want to go to public school, you have to get, your vaccines, right? And you do have to go to public school unless you provide for homeschooling options, right? So basically it's mandatory, but there are ways out if you want them. And I think that's the kind of mandatory I would want for a COVID vaccine, if any. What I would not want, so that is to say, if you want to go to a public school, you have to get your COVID vaccine. If you want, to do something else where we would traditionally require a vaccine, you would have to get a vaccine. I would have no problem with a corporation saying, if you want to work for us, you have to have your COVID vaccine. And in fact, I imagine a lot of corporations would say that because, who wants to have to, who wants to deal with the alternative? But I would not support the federal government saying flat out every adult will get a COVID vaccine and that's that. No. But I do think that if you want to use a government school, of course, you'd have to get a COVID vaccine. And if somebody wants to require you to get a COVID vaccine as a condition of employment, I think that's absolutely legitimate. So, that's how I would think about that. And of course, I would hope that the federal government subsidizes the COVID vaccine so that it's cheap and I guess ideally free for everybody.
How do you justify supporting an economic system that, on its current path, is currently causing global warming and eventually extinction for the human species?
Yeah. So one, I will say, is even the worst predictions as far as climate change go, I think short of turning the planet into Venus, don't amount to human extinction. But nevertheless, they do amount to the displacement, potentially of hundreds of millions of people and rapidly devolving standard of living, collapsing ecosystems. But for what it's worth, I don't think that human beings are going to go extinct. That said, that's cold comfort, of course. As far as an economic system that is driving climate change, look, I don't think that's a fair characterization at all. Carbon emissions are the result of economic development, and economic development happens in just about every economic system. It's worth taking a look if anybody's interested. It's probably not really worth your time given that the Soviet Union died, but the Soviet Union's environmental record was the most devastating, as far as I've ever been able to see, in the history of the world. The Soviet Union pumped out far more emissions per person than the United States did. or I believe per unit of GDP, I think, than the United States did. It's far less efficient. It destroyed ecosystems. The Soviet Union, for example, killed more whales, engaged in more illicit, destructive whaling than any other country, I believe, in the history of the world. The Aral Sea is a testament to Soviet environmental policy. It is almost gone. What was once, I think, the one of the largest lakes or freshwater seas in the world, almost dead to this day as a result of the failures of Soviet central planning. Of course, they're, the person who asked the question, I'm not sure, what their background is. Maybe they've got a brand of socialism that would work if actually tried, but I doubt it. Capitalism does a much better job of, I think, improving people's standard of living with time than, any of the alternatives do. But, of course, improving people's standard of living does come with, at least, historically it has meant more carbon emissions. So, look, I don't think the answer to global warming is to go back to a system that in its heyday was even more environmentally destructive. The Soviet or Chinese style central planning. And I don't, people talk about other variants of socialism, but in terms of what actually existed, that's what it was. It was an environmental catastrophe. Look, capitalism does the best job of improving people's lives. Obviously, the state needs to be involved in a variety of ways. I'm not an anarchist, nor would I ever be. But, we need the government to regulate and to do things, I guess, to kind of take the lead on incentivizing solutions to climate change. But capitalism is, the prosperity, the excess prosperity generated by capitalism, the money that we can therefore tax and use for dealing with climate change is, I think, the only hope for addressing it. I don't think, socialism, which broadly speaking would impoverish people and reduce the ability of the government to do anything positive environmentally, I don't think that's the answer. Now, somebody may have some kind of counter argument where they say, well, you see, this one time in Cuba in 2003, there was actually a program where some biodiversity was enhanced because of a program and this shows that socialism can restore ecologies or, improve the environment. But look, as far as I can see, totalitarianism and dictatorship, it not only is destructive to the environment, but frankly, the only country in the world I can think of that has probably cut carbon emissions thoroughly and consistently in the last 20 years, perhaps the most consistent. I would be curious. Actually, I'm going to look this up right now because I'm super curious about this. The carbon emissions for... Okay, yeah, no, not even Venezuela. I thought Venezuela might cut its carbon emissions, but no, Venezuela's carbon emissions have still been flat despite all the poverty and misery. They peaked during the golden age of Venezuela in the early 2000s and have been flat ever since after a big crash that lines up with the general decline in living standards in that country. So yeah, look, capitalism has its problems, but global warming will be resolved through capitalism, not through socialism.
Has Trump been doing a good job economically?
No. His tax cuts, his cut on the corporate taxes as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was a good thing. Beyond that, I think that the president's tariffs have been an economic disaster. I think they haven't improved our standard of living. They have made goods more expensive and made it more expensive to do business in this country. But I think the overwhelming thing you can say about the president's handling of the economy is just his failure to properly handle COVID-19. If the president had, perhaps if we can imagine another president, perhaps a Hillary Clinton, perhaps she had won. Say what you will about Hillary Clinton, but she would have been a steady hand at the till who probably would have, as far as possible, got the disease under control much earlier I mean, we still haven't got the disease under control in this country. It's hard to aspire, perhaps, to a response to COVID-19 as effective as that of New Zealand, but I think Hillary Clinton would have come closer to that than Donald Trump did. And what has cratered our economy? It's been the effects of COVID-19. Now, nobody knows. It's a counterfactual, but I think the biggest disaster economically for this president has been his handling of COVID-19. If we had had a coherent national policy, if we had had a coherent call for relief, if we had had a coherent, like not just the first stimulus, because the first stimulus was pretty good, but if we'd had a coherent presidency that had tried to not just take effective actions to keep COVID-19 under control, but had given people confidence, right? Because market economies thrive on confidence. If we had given the market more confidence through a steadier hand at the till, I think the economic pain wouldn't have been as bad as it was. So, that's probably the biggest disaster. But even without COVID, I think it's hard to give him much credit. I think he did do some good things. Again, the corporate tax rate in the United States was too high, and I'm glad that he championed its cut. The other parts of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the Trump tax cuts, were not so good. But that, I think, was a pretty good one. But yeah, the tariffs have they have not really haven't helped many people. They've made goods more expensive in the United States, and also the worst thing he did on day one, the worst thing prior to COVID, that is to say, he withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the trade deal that would have given the United States free trade with all of our East Asian partners, and which would have eventually perhaps cajoled China into joining in on that free trade pact, and basically brought China into kind of an American-led multilateral trade bloc that would have made them more responsible economic partners, would have reduced a lot of the problems that President Trump has complained about, sometimes rightly, about China stealing technology and this, that, and the other. Well, on day one, I believe, of the Trump administration, withdrew from the TPP. That was a disaster, an absolute disaster. And recently, China signed a free trade deal with its East Asian neighbors, and that kind of is the disastrous conclusion of the president's trade policy. So no, I don't think he's been good economically, and I think his COVID though has to be the worst part of his economic package.
So, what famous economists do you agree with the most?
I guess probably Milton Friedman, that is. I'm a big Milton Friedman fan. But I imagine he would not agree with a lot of my positions on things like, the importance of universal health care and, universal basic income. But generally speaking, yeah, I think Milton Friedman is is probably my favorite. Of course, I named myself after a French economist, Bastiat, who argued very effectively against tariffs and trade restrictions. Wrote The Parable of the Broken Window, another great work called What is Seen versus What is Unseen, thinking about basically making the point that economists have to think about all the different ways all the different ways their policies impact society. Not just the ways that they can see, but the ways that are unseen. So,
should the U.S. return to the gold standard or press forward with the fiat banknote?
Yeah, I don't see any argument for returning the gold standard, and Milton Friedman himself made the point that there's no real value in doing so. I don't see the argument for returning the gold standard. It seems like it would just artificially reduce the quantity of the money supply by saying that every dollar has to be backed by a certain amount of gold. And I think to make the gold standard work, I think we would probably need a lot more fiscal discipline than we have in the United States now anyway. So I don't see the purpose. I'm not sure what the point is. I'm not sure what benefit we would get out of it. It seems to me to be something that economists much more qualified than I have a consensus against the gold standard having much value. So I'm not sure that I just don't see the purpose of it. Like, the United States dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. If the United States government goes under, what good are your little gold rocks going to be? They're not. You know, the full faith and credit of the United States is what counts. So to say that is a basis less sound, I think, than the gold standard is fallacious.
Are monopolies good or natural, and should they be dissolved?
I don't think monopolies are good in most circumstances, but I guess this is kind of a complex question. So, by the way, I apologize to our stream right now. We had a bit of lag there, so I apologize for that, but we should be good now. As far as monopolies go, the problem with monopolies, right, is that they restrict all those things that we normally think of as good in a free market economy. For example, competition, choice, all those things are very difficult when you have a monopoly. So I don't think most monopolies are natural. I tend to be of the opinion that virtually every monopoly you can think of, with a couple of notable exceptions, is the result of government action, government favoritism, government protectionism, or refusal to enforce government law. So, for example, De Beers, the old diamond monopoly, which is no longer so much of a monopoly, was the one real private monopoly I could think of. But beyond that, typically all the monopolies I can think of are the result of, some kind of government favoritism. Amazon, for example, I wouldn't call Amazon a monopoly, but to the extent Amazon has grown, a huge reason why it has grown so quickly is not only because Amazon made a good deal with the post office, but because for a very long time, Amazon was protected by a Supreme Court decision that basically made it so that Amazon did not have to collect and pay sales taxes. That decision was repealed in 2017 by South Dakota v. Wayfair. I'm not sure if I've got the year on that decision right, but in essence, one of the reasons Amazon grew was because of, partly because of government favoritism. I don't mean to say that Amazon would not be, a successful company without it, but certainly that favor helped very much. I don't know about natural monopolies outside of government involvement, though. I'm very suspicious of those. Perhaps the most compelling argument I've heard for these is to look at like social media websites like Facebook and Twitter and say, yes, these websites are very popular. They're popular because they are popular, right? Facebook will continue to grow because Facebook is where everybody is at. Well, I don't know about that. One, I think if you view, I think that's kind of a perspective sort of thing. Like, Facebook and Twitter are not, I think they're basically competitors with one another. Facebook, Twitter, Parler, YouTube, Twitch, all these, Reddit, these are all social media platforms that compete with one another. So I don't view any of them as monopolies. Some of them have come and gone. MySpace, for example, Google Plus. Google Plus never really got off the ground, I suppose, but MySpace was quite big for a long time. The same has been true historically with search engines, right? Netscape, Yahoo. Who remembers those, right? It's all Google now. But browsers, Internet Explorer, then Firefox, then Google Chrome. You might argue that we are in a period of time where that turnover has started to break down. But I don't know that I would argue that, therefore, these monopolies are natural and that we need the government to stop them. It may just be that these companies have gotten better at what they do, but I don't know that means, therefore, that for example, Google will be the force it is today 10 years from now. I'm very also suspicious of the antitrust case currently levied against Google. I will concede right now that I haven't read the whole thing, but the reason I'm suspicious is that I think a lot of these Republican senators making these arguments against social media companies are, I think they are very frustrated or very motivated by this argument that social media is discriminating against conservatives. I think they're more motivated by that than they are by any real antitrust concerns. So I'm very skeptical of that. But yeah, I guess don't know, I guess generally speaking, monopolies are bad. I don't think they're natural. The only example, I guess, for a monopoly you might say is good are certain utility type monopolies, but I wouldn't even regard them as good so much as I would regard them as less bad than the alternative. For example, the power lines are a utility everywhere in the country, monopoly utility, just about everywhere in the country, except for where they're owned by the government outright, which is, I guess, another form of monopoly. Competing sets of power lines doesn't really, not only doesn't make sense, but is very impractical to imagine doing in any sense. So in that case, a monopoly might be natural because of the technological limitations, because of the spatial limitations. I can't have two competing sets of power lines in my front yard. So that is an example, I guess, of the very limited area where, some monopoly might be kind of natural or desirable. But I think those are exceptions.
Do you support ranked choice voting?
Yes, as far as I know, ranked choice voting would be a good improvement over what we've got now. I know there's also a STV, single transferable vote system. I'm not sure which one of these I would like better or worse, but they all seem to be better choices overall because they give people more choice in a meaningful sense to vote for, third parties if they want. Without feeling like, the old argument of you have to vote for us or you're throwing your vote away would disappear or be greatly reduced in these systems. And that seems to be a good thing. So generally speaking, yes, I support
them. Was this election a lesser of two evils situation, or was there one clear decision for you?
Yeah, I think Biden was not just the lesser of two evils for me. I think he's, he seems like a good man who I think will do a good job as president. That being said, I guess normally when I was arguing against people about Joe Biden, I would make the lesser of two evils argument anyway, because that is a much easier thing to convince a cynic of than, well, actually Joe Biden has a good record of helping people with his legislation, and the good has outweighed the bad, and on and on and on. I think Joe Biden was not just the lesser of two evils, but I like Joe Biden. He wasn't my first choice. I liked Andrew Yang. I also liked John Delaney. I liked Pete Buttigieg, but Bernie Sanders was my last choice. But I certainly would have in a heartbeat voted for Bernie Sanders over Donald Trump. So, but yeah, I liked Joe
Biden. As you've heard, the PS5 has been in short supply everywhere.
Yeah.
Is scalping ethical and non-essential goods?
Yeah, I don't see any argument that is unethical. To give some background here, I posted a tweet. Let me just find it real quick, just so that I can pull this up. I'd really like to get this right. I'd like to read this out and get it right, because there's a lot of controversy over this tweet. This actually is, surprisingly enough, literally the most controversial tweet I ever posted of all time. I lost more followers over this tweet than I have over anything related to capitalism, socialism, anything like that. It must have lost at least 100. I posted a picture of me putting 13 PS5s into my Walmart.com shopping cart. And then I said, this year, I'm thankful for all the PS5s I managed to snag for resale at a very modest markup, selling those at a modest markup of, I think, an additional $275, netted me somewhere around $3,500, which I'm looking forward to using along with my proceeds from being a landlord, to fund a trip to Cuba next week. I'm very excited. I think it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of tenants have told me that Cuba is just this wonderful country, great healthcare, blah 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 blah, whatever. I'm looking forward to going. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Going to get my drink on, get my Cuban cigar on. It's going to be a good time. All right. And Americans, you have to go to Mexico first. It's a whole rigmarole. We got to drop that Cuban blockade. It's terrible. All right, but I'm looking forward to seeing what Cuba's like. Because again, a lot of these lefties have been telling me how great Cuba is. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to sharing that adventure with each and every one of you. But that said, As far as scalping goes, I call it arbitrage. All right, for one, and for two, certainly for a luxury good like a children's toy, a PS5, there's no argument against it. I bought a PS5 and then I resold a PS5. It's my property to do with as I see fit. And if you don't like it, I don't have anything to say to you. That's irrelevant. I mean, there are some people who would say, well, you see, what if, what about you're ruining people's Christmas. You're ruining people's Christmas. You bought all these 13 PS5s. You're being a net harm to people. Somebody's saying it in the chat right now. A conservative of all people, although conservatives increasingly are uninterested in market economics, are more interested in, I guess, what feels right. Although you're cool, Rob Boss, but that's generally speaking. Look, you people don't know who I sold those PS5s to. I sold those PS5s to people who didn't have money at the time the PS5s were set for resale, didn't have money at the time that the PS5s were released. I sold those to people who didn't have time to sit there at 12:01 a.m. or whenever they came out. Hey, I got to get my PS5s. I sold them to people who weren't just, nonstop gamers. I sold those to good, hardworking people who thanked me for it. And I'll tell you this, folks. The best part, I got to show you this. The best part of the PS5 saga, let me pull this up here. I've got to share these really quick with y'all for everybody watching the stream right now. People literally DM'd me asking me to sell them PS5s. All right there after that one. There's one. I asked for their permission to share these pictures, by the way. This was a good one here. You still got a PS5? I got $700. Wow, So if I had more, I certainly would have sold those too. But look, I don't see any problem with buying a good and reselling a good to somebody who wants that good. Now, you might go and say, well, okay, and clearly a lot of people disagree with me on this because there's a fellow by the name of Empanada who, wanted to cut my head off over it. Hey, that's unfortunate. He was banned from Twitter afterward. That's unfortunate for him. But, you've got to ask yourself, why is this a problem? What is the harm that you're doing when you buy a comment or when you buy an item and then you resell it for a profit? I don't see any harm done. Let's see here. For example, Rob Boss says, if you told me you gave them to the poor kids, I would have patted you on the back, bro, but I guess a vacation is more important. First of all, it's absolutely my right to provide a service that people find value for in exchange for remuneration that I then spend on a trip to Cuba. So that's one. For two, though, I think it's important to remember that the shortage of PS5s, is something that is not resolved by, I guess, what would you do? Impose a law that says that you can't buy a good and then resell it? Basically, restrict somebody's individual freedom as to do with their PS5 as they see fit? Like, what exactly would your solution to that be? So long story short, I don't see anything unethical with buying property voluntarily and then reselling that property voluntarily. And I would go further and say that I don't see that problem even with essential goods. I don't see that problem even with food and medicine. I see, in fact, that price gouging laws, anti-scalping laws, promote shortages by preventing goods from getting where they need to go by making it less profitable to produce and sell those goods. That being said, I would say that as far as medicine goes, the bigger problem in this country is that we don't have universal health care. We already have exorbitant prices for medical services, even before any kind of the nonsense that I'm talking about now with respect to scalping, insulin pins or things like that. And what we should have, rather than, going after, I guess, some individuals who want to, resell goods for a profit, is we should have a universal health care system like we have in every other developed country in the world. So, if you want to say it's negative economic behavior, I'll tell you this right now. My primary concern is not efficiency. My primary concern is individual freedom, is my freedom to buy and sell freely with other voluntary, with other people voluntarily in a free market. And it is not purely on the argument of efficiency that I stand by that point. It is primarily the argument of individual freedom. Efficiency generally follows from that, but that's not the primary purpose for me.
Do you believe that the federal government should require racial sensitivity training for employees?
I guess no. Although I guess I could see why that would be a good thing. You know, I don't have like. I guess I don't know that the U.S. government should require it, but you know, depending on what it looked like, that could be a good thing. I guess we've all seen those clickbait SJW kind of videos, you know, compilation videos where they show what seems to be very excessive and nonsensical racial sensitivity training. But generally speaking, I guess in theory, I have no problem with the idea. I just don't know that I'd make it mandatory. I'd have to know what it looked like before I could say it should be mandatory. You know.
Would you be in favor of a lockdown to combat COVID-19 either federally or on a state level?
At this point, probably not. I mean, it seems like we'd either, if we were going to do such a thing, we would need a kind of stimulus that would be just in, I don't know, pretty incredible stimulus to shut the whole country down again. But I guess I like what Joe Biden said, that, you know, we should give businesses the resources to stay open safely. I can't imagine that shutting down, like, a comprehensive national lockdown should have been done the first time. What we instead got was a patchwork lockdown that was fought tooth and nail everywhere people tried to implement it. And, you know, look, the ship has sailed, I think, on a national lockdown. I'm not sure who's arguing for it. I haven't heard the arguments made for it yet. Maybe Biden has been arguing for a national lockdown. I haven't heard that. But yeah, I don't think that's the way to go. It seems to be that a second round of stimulus spending is good, and that certain restrictions, perhaps, you know, that local and state governments want to put in place with respect to the number of people in a store, or the number of, you know, how long a store may be open, or whether you have to wear a mask or not, is reasonable stuff. But just shutting down the whole economy again is, I think that's a non-starter.
All right, one last question.
Sure.
Would you rather fight a lion or a cheetah?
That's a tough one. A lion or a cheetah? Gosh. You know, let me see. What is the? I don't know enough about lions and cheetahs to know for sure. Let's see. Lions. I mean, I'm tempted to say either way I lose. Lions seems to be like, either way they're going to catch me. So the speed advantage of the cheetah doesn't seem to be particularly meaningful, because the lion is still going to catch me anyway. The lion seems to be more powerful than the cheetah, so I guess I might take my chances with the cheetah than the lion. I'm imagining that either way, this isn't a fight so much as it is me crawling into a ball and hoping that I live. So I guess I'm picking the cheetah right there. That's my vote, is Team Cheetah, because the cheetah is not as powerful as the lion and may get tired of killing me quicker than the lion. Maybe I could fight back against cheetah. I kind of doubt it. I have been working out, but cheetahs work out 24/7 since they are wild animals in nature. But that's my hunch, is that I'd have a better chance against a cheetah. However, I do know that male lions hang out. They like sleep 20 plus hours a day, and they're like some of the laziest animals. So maybe there's something to the lion argument. But it seems like the lion is the scarier of the two options.
All right. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I guess I would say this. Generally speaking, I know we talked about a lot, and I appreciate you guys being tolerant of me rambling. But I don't think it was all rambling. I'm just trying to give comprehensive answers to really good questions. I want to say to everybody who submitted questions today, I really appreciate them. They were really good. The PS5 answer, for anybody who doesn't know, that was a big meme that blew up crazy on Twitter. But memes aside, though, we have a lot of good discussions here on the channel. I really enjoyed this AMA. It was a lot of fun. And for anybody who wants to see what I'm about, You can find me at twitch.tv/BASTIAT. And would you mind if I posted a link in your channel?
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. I'll post that link in the, let's see, in the general chat. If anybody wants to see, you can find my stream there. I'm streaming now, and I'm going to be streaming for at least another couple of hours. So, if you've got more questions, you want to come on over, check it out. I'll keep on going. But thank you all so much. Blue Politics Discord is top notch. So, a lot of fun.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a good night.
Have a good night.
All right, take care. All right, folks. That was a good Discord discussion, or a good discussion with the Politics Discord. What did y'all think? Did y'all enjoy that? Was that some fun? Did you like that? God, people ask me to go over the economics of scalping. Not scalping, ladies and gentlemen. It's arbitrage. Okay, it's financial arbitrage. Okay, so let's get some music going while we are chatting here. Dude, that PS5 stuff is crazy time. And just to be clear, again, I did. Oh my goodness! Hold on a minute here. Wow. Okay. Somebody just DM'd me socialist scum. Wow. Okay. Wow. Some of the... Oh, Dr. Socialism, that was you. Oh, wow, Dr. Socialism. Well, how about that? Thanks for the DM. He sends me a message that says, "Dear Dad, you're probably wondering why there is gay femboy porn in my search history." And then calls me socialist. The internet is a magical place, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. I've been called a socialist more than once. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm not going anywhere here. Rob Boss says, scalping sounds like something a privileged white lawyer would do. I don't think so. Most lawyers probably would not view scalping as worth their time. But I did it because it was fun. Socialist scum, I wish. All right. So, folks, if you've got questions, drop them in the chat. I'd be happy to respond to as many as I can. By the way, as a quick reminder, there's a link to our Discord. Check it out. It's a great community. Or, sorry, a link to our Twitter. Check it out. It's a wonderful, wonderful account. I think it's a lot of fun. So check out the Twitter account right there. Cool cat pictures, hot neoliberal retweets, and all the memes of your most fevered dreams. So check them out. Also, our Discord and our YouTube. Great communities, one and all. And of course, if you haven't followed us already, you certainly should. We are 200 followers away from 30,000. Pretty cool. And of course, if you'd like to subscribe, hey, subscribe with Twitch Prime. Amazon Prime is free of charge, and all your subscriptions go to making this channel a wonderful, wonderful place. So, holy macaroni, ladies and gentlemen. I think, I'm very excited, actually. The last thing we were saving up for on the channel here, a third monitor and a cool audio boom, just arrived while we were doing the AMA. So very cool. I'm going to be setting that up later tonight. Okay, so with that, question time. Okay, besides Milton Friedman, do you like Thomas Sowell? Yes, on economic stuff. Yes, on some other stuff, but his social takes, not so much. And his support for President Trump over the last couple of years, definitely not. But Tom Sowell in the 1980s was hard to beat. So, yeah. But, a lot of his more recent stuff, not as much a fan of. But, Tom Sowell, I do like him. When he was good, he was great. Have you ever taken the Dumb Political Compass test? Not sure if this is different from any other political compass test, but I've taken many political compass tests, and of course we had a great political compass today, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm going to share with you all, that was made by a Jelly Brigade, great friend of the channel. Right here, this is of course my political compass. Let me see if I can, hold on a minute here, let me do something here real quick, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. We're gonna, this is real-time stream editing here. Okay. Just gotta get that camera in place, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So, Sorry about this. I'm very scuffed tonight. Flip it horizontal. All right, perfect. This here. This is the ultimate political compass, all right? Auth-right, authoritarian right-wing, right up here. Make America Great Again, lecture fan, anti-party switch. It is lecture fan, a conservative streamer. I bought one of his t-shirts, very comfy. He claims that the party's never switched. Here is, of course, auth-left, me with a wonderful book called Constitutional Government Today in Soviet Russia. That's a copy of the Soviet Constitution, the Stalin Constitution of 1937. Of course, right here in lib left is Bastiat. And I gotta say, I'd do me, you know, and not to objectify myself or anything, but, and of course, lib right, there's the real me. There's the real me, of course, on lib right, just clowning around, you know. Okay. And anyway, let me see if I can find. There's one other picture of me that I think you folks might enjoy if I can find it. You know, we've done our share of costumes on the channel here. I want to see if I can find one more really good one. Not sure if I'm gonna see it though. Joker. Yeah, I don't know if I see it here right now, but of course there's also neoconservative Bastiat right here. That's another one. All right, so there you go. I was trying to find the full-size Joker picture, but couldn't find that. All right. Okay, so thank you all so much for that. Okay. So, question time. Life, Liberty, and Property says, don't you think his social and economic takes, that is to say, Thomas Sowell's social and economic takes, are inextricably linked? And does that mean you agree with Sowell that Trump's economic policies were net positive? No. I don't. I guess I'll say this. I like Thomas Sowell from what I saw of him when he was, speaking very vocally during the Reagan years. I like Thomas Sowell less when I hear him speaking in the Trump years. And I would not presume to place my intellect beyond Thomas Sowell's, but I would say that it seems like he has gone more MAGA than I think perhaps an earlier Thomas Sowell would have. Like Thomas Sowell, by the 2010s, was saying that President Obama was the worst president in American history, and it's, I don't know. I don't know how he could come to some of those conclusions, but I think when he was criticizing the welfare state as it existed at the time, when he was criticizing the Great Society programs as they existed at the time, when he was arguing against calls for a more restricted economy, I think he was pretty good. So you could argue, I guess, that they're interlinked. His social views, which are very conservative, and his economic views, which are very free market. But I guess I wouldn't argue that. I don't know what social conservatism has to do with a free market economy. That just seems to me to have been a coalition of views that made up kind of the Reagan era. But I don't know that there's anything inherently conservative about free market economics. Indeed, I would imagine they are inherently not conservative because the free market really, kind of jumbles up society and I would imagine makes it harder for for patriarchal traditional institutions to survive purely on their own merits, since they have to compete with others. So I don't know. I liked vintage Thomas Sowell. I don't like modern Thomas Sowell so much. Recorder Mike says, who do you believe was the best president in your lifetime? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Because all the good presidents I can think of did bad things, but I don't know. I guess it's got to be... no, Styles, I'm not going to say Reagan, although Reagan's a contender. But, it's like Clinton. My first answer was to say Clinton. Because Clinton's economy grows prodigiously, and because his interventions, I think, were pretty good. Stops the genocide in Yugoslavia. So I'm inclined to say Clinton overall, but Clinton also does pretty destructive welfare reform. And he didn't intervene in Rwanda, but I mean, and he also didn't, I guess it's hard for me to hold, like, he stopped at least one genocide. I mean, that was good. It's hard for me to, the crime bill. Although I guess even Bernie voted for the crime bill. It's tough, basically. Reagan, I think, had a lot of good. Reagan also had bad. AIDS crisis, Iran-Contra. And what was that other one? Reagan, AIDS crisis, Iran-Contra, and the war on drugs. But, fighting the Soviet Union, a solid monetary policy. I think the first round of tax cuts were good. So, but and then Obama, Obama's handling of the financial crisis, pretty solid. I think he did a lot of restoration of our foreign policy after the disaster of the Bush years. So it's tough. My gut feeling is to say Clinton. If I have to pick one in my lifetime, Bill Clinton. Who's worse, Bush or Trump? I think on January 20th, it will probably be easy enough to say Bush is worse. If Trump had another term, I don't know if I could have said that. But in terms of damage caused to our democracy, to the world writ large, probably Bush. Hard to say, though, in some ways, because did Bush do more damage to the fabric of our democracy than Trump? Maybe. He did dramatically expand the intelligence state, the domestic intelligence state, the Patriot Act. 9/11, he didn't do it, of course, but he failed to stop it. And this didn't happen like 2 weeks into his term. This happened 9 months into his term. And he had intelligence telling him that bin Laden was determined to attack America. So, but COVID-19, I mean, damn. Imagine Hurricane Katrina on steroids, and that's COVID-19, right? So, it's tough. I'm tempted to say Bush. He was in office, had more time to do more damage. But, and of course the war in Iraq was a disaster, right? I think the war in Iraq could absolutely be justified. I think it was justified. But that's a very different point than to say that it was a good idea and that it should have been done, right? If somebody attacks me, I am justified in attacking them back. If somebody does violence to a neighbor, I am justified in attacking them, right? Nobody is obligated to tolerate violence or dictatorship. Morally obligated, that is. But whether you should go in and launch a disastrous war that discredits the United States for a generation is another issue entirely. And as Stalin said, the premises were arguably false and in any event shaky. We did find some very minimal leftover chemical weapons, but it was pretty shaky. However, if you want to hear the Bush was great and Iraq War based take, check out Totally Mundane, who is a fixture in our Discord. He will give you a much more positive take on George W. Bush. I can't give you one, though. However, I think the war in Afghanistan was justified, and longtime viewers of the channel know that I do not want to withdraw from Afghanistan. I do not want to hand the country and its 37 million people to the Taliban. I do not want to condemn 19 million women and girls to what amounts to The Handmaid's Tale, unironically. It's terrible. The Taliban were horrific, and the war in Afghanistan, I think, is, whatever you think of it, a preferable alternative to rule by the Taliban. Yeah, Stalin's exactly like what Trump did to the Kurds when he abandoned them. It's a disaster. Bush just to be clear, Rob Oz, I'm not saying Bush did 9/11. I'm saying that it happened on his watch and that he could have stopped it as president. He was president for 9 months and he did not. I'm not saying he did it. I'm not saying he knew it was going to happen, but I'm saying that you can blame him for it. How can you blame it on somebody? You can blame somebody for a failure to prevent an attack. Absolutely. Yes, you can. In fact, I'll go further and say that while FDR didn't know about Pearl Harbor, the fact that Pearl Harbor happened, the fact that he didn't preventatively take actions that would have prevented the Japanese from doing Pearl Harbor, yeah, you can blame him for that. Now, I think that's a different point than saying you knew that this attack was going to happen as it did, and you didn't stop it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, though, that the security of the United States is ultimately up to the President of the United States, and when it is compromised, it is his fault to have failed to stop it. It is the job of the President to keep the country safe, and if he can't do it, he's failed, right? So that's I think that's a different point than, that's a different point. Can you blame Hillary for Benghazi? I don't know all the facts about Benghazi, but I'm open to saying that for the sake of consistency. Yes. I'm not as well versed in it. But yeah, I'm open to that. Yeah. So, buck stops here. I mean, ultimately, didn't that happen while President Obama was president? So, wouldn't we blame him for it as well? All right. That take completely demonstrates your lack of nuance in the understanding of our complex system of the intelligence community's relationship with the president. Look, the buck stops with the president, man. I mean, I just don't see the argument otherwise. Like FDR, I suppose we probably wouldn't spend much time talking about how Pearl Harbor was a disaster if we had had a successful war afterward, and had not permanently sacrificed much of our freedom in the process. But unlike FDR, the original attack was not followed by a successful campaign against the people who perpetrated it. It was a muddle for the better part of a decade until President Obama finally succeeds in bringing Osama bin Laden to justice. I mean, I remember, I think 6 years into the Bush term, he was asked whether Osama bin Laden was even a priority anymore, and he seemed disinterested in even catching or killing Osama bin Laden. So it was terribly handled, as far as I can see, from start to finish. Okay. And you might make the argument that nobody could have done better, but that seems like a cop-out, I mean, at that point, what can we blame any president for, right? Okay. You do blame the actual incidence of COVID on Trump then, right? Reducing CDC staff. Ben of Rome, I would at least give some credit or some blame for that to him. I mean, just to be clear, I don't think we can give Trump absolute blame for COVID-19, period. It seems like the final blame goes to the Chinese Communist Party for COVID-19. Now, what I am blaming President Trump for is not controlling the spread of COVID-19 to the United States, but, I will concede that some COVID-19 would have happened here no matter what. But, the ultimate blame for COVID-19 does have to go to the Chinese Communist Party. President Trump, though, certainly merits blame for failing to control the spread in the United States. Sorry, that music slowed down a little bit. I'm not a fan of what it turned into. Let me, let's see. Let's get some other Russian music here. Okay, I like this music. It's I don't know how to pronounce this. Molchat Doma, I think. Let me see if I can get it here. Molchat Doma. I don't know what that means. It's a Belarusian post-punk band from Minsk. So check it out. But I like their stuff. It's great stuff. Okay. All right. Don't forget Bush and Bin Laden playing phone tag back then. I'm not sure what you mean by them playing phone tag. Okay, your boy Yuri asked a good question here. There are a lot of people who live under oppressive governments. At what point do we say that it is no longer the responsibility of our nation to put in lives and money and continue fighting that kills bystanders in a war that we're no closer to winning now than we were before some of the people deployed that were born? Well, I guess I would say this. First of all, we have taken on the obligation to Afghanistan by invading the country in the first place, right? So once you've taken on the obligation, I don't think you can leave Afghanistan any more than we could leave, California, to some kind of dictatorship or something. We have taken on the obligation to this country by invading it. So that's one. I don't think we can just say, look, good luck. Hope the Taliban work out for you. I think that would be wrong, for one. Especially given that I think you could pretty clearly say that the war in Afghanistan is less harmful to the people of Afghanistan than a totalitarian Taliban regime would be to the people of Afghanistan. More people are killed every year in traffic accidents, from the research I did, than are killed in war, in violent conflict in Afghanistan. That's not to devalue the loss of human life. It is to say that if the alternative is losses of human life or a totalitarian theocratic hellscape, I would continue the war. So from a loss of human life perspective, the bystanders you mentioned, I think that's a secondary consideration. I do not view, and have never viewed, the sanctity of human life to be more important than, like all your freedom, right? I would put life as being less precious than freedom from totalitarian dystopia. Beyond that, your other point, when is no longer the responsibility of our nation? I don't know when an obligation like that expires. I don't know that it ever does once taken on. I think we have an obligation to bring it to a successful conclusion as far as possible, which is to say the establishment of a stable democratic government. And then as far as no closer to winning now than we were before some of the people deployed there were born, I will say this. The fact that we have failed thus far to bring a successful conclusion to the war in Afghanistan does not itself mean that such a conclusion is impossible or beyond the will of the United States. The United States has put has split its attention ever since the invasion of Iraq, and I do not think that the United States should have, it's one of the reasons the invasion of Iraq was such a disaster, right? It almost doomed the effort in Afghanistan, but I would not give up on the people of Afghanistan. I think the fact, for example, that we've been there for 20 years, I don't know that that means that much. I mean, individual soldiers, for example, have not been deployed there for 20 years straight. Each soldier still has their term of service, and, so the fact that it's been 20 years, I guess I don't know that is a particularly salient fact to me. Again, I think it's about alternatives. And if your alternative to the status quo is a totalitarian Taliban dictatorship, I ain't making a deal with the Taliban. Now you might say to me, Bastiat, you chicken hawk, why don't you go over there and fight yourself? Now look, I think I can hold a policy position without wanting to actively implement it on the ground. That seems to me to be an argument very much like saying, if you want higher taxes, why don't you just pay them? If you want higher taxes, libtard, why don't you just pay those taxes? No. I mean, I think you can have an argument about national policy that doesn't involve you being actively involved. Of course, I am very proud to serve my country as a fossil fuel shill PS5 scalper. Merrick DeVille, it is so good to have you here. I'm glad you can make it. I hope you're doing well. It's a real delight to have you here with us tonight. And if you'd like to link your Twitter or anything, I know we have a few people in here watching. Good to have you. Okay. Anyway, so thank you for that question, your boy Yuri. I appreciate that. Braxton says, did you really scalp PS5s or was that a meme? We all saw the receipts. All right? That's all I'm going to say. We saw the receipts. Okay? You want to say it was a meme? All I can do is show you the shopping cart that I had at Walmart.com, because otherwise I already sold them all. They all gone. So I can't wave one in front of the screen and show you. Okay? But I coded my own bot, all right, to score my own PS5s. And if you were saying right now, Bossy, did you make all of that up just so you could be victimized? And then did you make all that PS5 stuff up for a fun meme? I mean, look, all I can say is, you see the picture. I mean, it looks real to me. Okay. Great question here from Alligator2222. Bassett, do you think colonization of Mars is worth it? Next 50 to 100 years? I guess it depends on what you mean. Like, I hope it happens. I hope the United States pioneers a landing on Mars. Sounds great. You know, I'm down for that. I guess the bigger question is, I suppose, worth it? Like, how much of our gross domestic product should we commit to a landing on Mars? I don't know that I have a number there, but I guess I'm at least open to, you know, what we spent on Apollo, which I believe Apollo GDP, I think it was somewhere around, what percent? Okay, a new accounting for the Apollo mission. How much did we spend on Apollo? Let's see. How much did it cost? Percent. Let's see. 1.6% of the federal budget, I believe. NASA total, yeah. Let's see. Apollo, yeah, okay. So what, 2%? I've heard estimates that go as high as the peak of NASA funding as a part of the federal budget was somewhere between 4 and 5%. So, yeah, that sounds good to me. I want the not the stars and bars, stars and stripes. Stars and bars is the Confederate one. But yeah, I think that's worthwhile. I think it would be a great thing, not just for science and economic progress, but also for, you know, to rejuvenate faith in the American system. What's up, hon? You hungry? Oh, how much longer? Oh, I don't know. We're having a good time. Is there something I... Okay, so Ms. Bastiat has made the Christmas tree much prettier, apparently. So we're gonna go for another half an hour, and then we'll check that out. She left a cat in here. Here, baby. She's too smart. She knows I'm gonna pick her up. Here, baby. Come on, baby. They're smart. Yeah, she doesn't want to be picked up. One second. Oh, wait. Come here, baby. I don't know if the camera's gonna zoom in. There she is. Okay, she is not happy, but we're gonna let her go. Okay. All right. So that's Kenzie. She doesn't like being picked up for the camera, but I'm gonna you know, we'll let me let her out. Bye, baby. Okay. All right. Sorry about that interruption. Okay, what camera do I use? I use a Sony a6000. It has an auto zoom feature, which I enjoy because it allows me to move around. But anyway, that's what I do. Alligator2222 says, follow up on Mars. How should it be divvied up? Is it ethical for nations on Earth to claim land and make laws there? Well, I think so, yeah. I mean, same way as it is anywhere else. And I guess I would like for the U.S. to claim Mars and have open borders immigration to Mars for anybody who wants to. Sounds based. But I don't know how tangible those claims are. I imagine those claims will be tangible based on who gets there first. That's my hunch. As for whether Mars will be free, maybe someday. But personally, I like the Newt Gingrich approach. Newt Gingrich is a terrible person. As far as I can tell, he has never failed to be petty, bitter. He is in some ways responsible for the low and mean state of our current politics, our polarized nature. But Newt Gingrich did have, one good idea, and that is that the moon should be colonized, and once it gets, I think, somewhere around 20,000 people, we can make it a state. Okay? So that sounds good to me. Okay. Okay. But yeah, so I'm down for Mars colonization. I don't think it's ethical or unethical any more than having government anywhere is unethical. I think government is inevitable, though. It's going to happen one way or another, so make the whole moon a state. Hey, as much of the moon as we can get, maybe we could divvy out portions to our allies. I don't know. Okay, but yeah, Mars colonization, all memeing aside, it's going to be a long time before we can get anybody there. In any appreciable capacity to where we talk about annexing the planet. If China does it first, then what we should do is what I know the Chinese would do if we did it first, which is that they would land on another part of Mars and claim that part for themselves and say, do something about it. All right? Because, it is a pretty big and ambitious thing to claim an entire planet. Nevertheless, when it comes to the United States and China, we are unironically the good guys. So yeah, I hope we do it. All right, Bad Hoss says, Bastiat makes claims about Afghanistan. Can you tell me if the Taliban are a stronger military force than the Nazis? No, of course not. Why doesn't America have the political will to use overwhelming force and eliminate any remaining Taliban like the Nazis? So sad. Well, I mean, I understand why people are not interested in Afghanistan, right? It's been 20 years. We've got all these domestic problems. Who wants to spend more time and resources in Afghanistan? I totally get that. But I don't think that means that we can just throw the Afghan people to the wolves. Especially when a lot of their current state is our fault. So, that's the way I feel about that. No problem, alligator. Alright, Bastiat will make a bet for $5 that the first starship will land on Mars in less than 6 years. Well, I don't know what you mean. If you mean a manned starship, I imagine it'll take longer. But I hope you're right. Any thoughts on the long-term consequences of Iran's nuclear scientist assassination? Well, on the one hand, I suppose I like that it will be harder for Iran to get a nuclear weapon since they are a geopolitical opponent of the United States. But on the other hand, assassinating state actors seems like a bad precedent to set. Because it is not beyond the capacity of other governments to assassinate our state actors, and, someday the shoe will be on the other foot, and I think it is probably more good than bad that we establish norms that states, do not engage in that kind of action, I guess outside of all-out war. That's a complex question. I doubt it will stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. It will slow Iran, I suppose, but I don't think anything short of a multilateral agreement is going to stop Iran from the nuclear bomb. I mean, if North Korea could get it, I'm sure Iran can eventually get it. All right. Let's see. Should the government be responsible for warning people that social media is addictive? I don't think so, tail of the tape. I don't think so. I'm not sure what the argument for that would be. Bastiat, how's your mathematical understanding? I'm an attorney. Not that great. All right. I'm not sure as as convinced that the U.S. staying would ever accomplish what it should. Well, Violent Smoker, if the U.S. stayed in its current capacity, probably not. I think the U.S. would have to send more troops and more money, and I recognize that is unlikely, but I would still say that the status quo better than feeding the country to the Taliban. I mean, even from a self-interested American perspective, I mean, here we have a base, full access base in Central Asia, right next to our greatest geopolitical rival, China. So even from a self-interested perspective, that base is arguably a potential jewel. But the more important question is the people of Afghanistan, and again, just giving them over to the Taliban. I mean, by all indications, that's what happens if we go. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. So, See the Communist has thoughts on PR statehood. Plus, should we annex Canada and Mexico? Puerto Rico should be a state, as long as it wants to be a state. But it is important to remember that once you are in this family of states, there's no getting out. So I understand why somebody might be hesitant, but there's no seceding from the Union. It is perpetual, and I would argue any violent attempt to change that would be unjust, so long as the United States is a free country. As far as Canada and Mexico, not unless the people of Canada and Mexico want it. But if they do, then sure, absolutely. And I don't care what party these people would vote for. I don't care if they are all Republicans. I don't care if they're all voting for Donald Trump. I don't care if it would give the Republicans a permanent majority in our government. There would be no such thing as a permanent majority. But, at least a very long majority. I don't care at all. I mean, the expansion of the country is the ultimate I know it would be blue in Canada's case, but even if it weren't, doesn't matter. Even if they would all vote communist, I do not care. Because one, I don't think voting preferences are fixed in stone. And two, because the expansion of the country is the ultimate in the long-term interest of the country. And, the short-term political, cost of having a regime I don't like in charge is nothing compared to that. I mean, maybe there are Republicans out there who are like this, but are there really any Republicans who would say, this country would be better if we never made it to the Pacific Ocean, because those coasties vote Democrat? I don't think so. Yeah. Rivers USA says, can you have Aaron of 3 Right Turns back on? Yeah, he's great. I'd love to. Especially since our last chat went down for technical reasons. I think that would be great. He's a great guy. I enjoyed our chat. Okay. Okay. Good Grief Griff says, not even a permanent majority of votes won't get Republicans. I don't know. As for Canada, though, we should absolutely have open borders with Canada. We should have completely unrestricted trade and immigration with Canada. If we can't with Canada, who can we? Certainly our greatest ally. If we had universal health care in this country, then maybe some kind of union would be plausible. I can't imagine Canadians acceding to such a union without basic guarantees of healthcare, for example. I think that I did laugh at your question, Banksy. You got me. I think the likelier thing, much likelier than annexation of Canada or Mexico, is free trade and free movement of people. And if you can live and work in Canada, and you have no restrictions of trade with Canada, then do you need annexation? We're already... Oh, and of course a full-fledged military alliance. Do you really need annexation at that point? That covers most of the good stuff. So, that said, totally down for annexation. Okay. Oh my god. So I guess Saddam Hussein tried to buy thousands of PS2s back in the day. Wow. You tell me Saddam scalped PS2s? Because if so, I'm going to have to rethink my take on Iraq. Okay. See, the Communist says, Canada's been with us in every war. True, at least since 1812. Canada is a friend. But if the people of province in Canada asked for annexation, of course, I would be for that. All right. If they democratically, and even then, that's a tough thing because I don't know how I'd feel about one province breaking away, and then I don't know. I'm not, but I guess I'm tentatively for it. We would be basically destroying an ally though by breaking up our neighbor. So tentatively for democratic annexations anywhere and everywhere. And I'll go further. If any sovereign country wanted it, then yeah, I would absolutely be in favor of it. For example, if, I don't know, if Mongolia applied for membership in the United States, bring them in. How do you style your hair? What I did today was I used a little bit of dry shampoo. Even China, yes, whole world, but most countries I don't think would want to give up their sovereignty so easily. But I would offer it to everyone. Now that being said, I think China would probably want to be admitted as multiple states, given that otherwise they would only get 2 senators, and that might be a problem. For them, 2 senators for 1.4 billion people could be a problem. So they'd probably want to join as several states. And Guangdong province is much different from Xinjiang province. Is much different from, I think it's Jili is the province with Beijing. I'm not entirely sure. Actually, no, Beijing I think is its own Chinese province. So they all have very different interests. Okay, yeah, I have no problem with the Senate, just to be clear. I do want to scrap the Electoral College, but the Senate is not a problem to me. But I imagine the notion of having a giant state is not really a risk. I don't think they want to have 2 senators. Although I guess China would totally dominate the House of Representatives. So anyway, okay. Sorry for the counterfactual here. As for what I do with my hair. Today, yesterday I showered and I blow dried it. I put no product in it. Today, I did not shower and I put a little bit of dry shampoo in it. So this is just my hair after one day. It's been, 24 hours since my last shower. So it's that plus dry shampoo. And that's what I did. A lot of it seems to be the, primarily about the cut. The styling is important too, but anyway. Okay. No more Plan America. Amen, Zoxic. Sounds good to me. Provided, of course, people join democratically. And, of course, we have a lot of stuff to get fixed before we can realistically go around saying, hey, would you like to join the United States? Okay. But I agree with the communists. Death to the Electoral College. Senate's fine. I mean, if we're going to have big states and small states, I think we need an institution that recognizes the equality between the states, the Senate, as well as an institution that recognizes the differences in population, the House of Representatives. And the House, I also agree with Citizen Cicero, we should uncap the House. I am not sure that there is an argument that a House of Representatives that is vastly larger is a problem. I don't see that that's a problem. I'm open to arguments for why it is a problem, but hey, the House of Commons in Great Britain has over 600 members. And the U.S. House of Representatives has only 435 for a much larger population. So, hey, I'm down to expand the House. Anyway. Okay. Hopeless Bacon says it's not big states and small states. It's the United States, and that's certainly true to a degree. But, we are a federal republic, and I think it's important that we, that states are... I support that. The notion of having constituent states with substantial local powers. J-Dub says, Bastiat, why do you think liberal democracy is sustainable when history shows that in times of economic instability, fascism naturally rises from liberalism? In the event that communism and fascism are the 2 dominant ideologies, who would you support, throw your support behind? All right, so I'll say this. First of all, when you say history shows that in times of economic instability, fascism naturally arises from liberalism. The societies that fascism arose in the interwar period in the 1930s, that I can think of, primarily Germany, Italy, Spain to a degree, although Francisco Franco was not so fascist as, say, Mussolini or Hitler. You could argue that Franco was not a fascist, was a dictator who used fascists. But anyway, whatever you say, I'll lump him in with the fascists. And some of the fascist movements in Eastern Europe at the time as well. These are not societies with well-grounded traditions of liberalism. Germany, Italy, and Spain were among the most illiberal nations in Europe. If fascism had arose in France or in Britain or in the United States, perhaps you'd have a good argument there, but the fascist states that arose were not liberal. The Weimar Republic was shaky from the start. So that's, I mean, and you're right, there was fascism, Hexit, in the UK, but, it didn't take state power, and it, as far as I know, never had a real chance at taking state power. So that's one thing. I'm very skeptical of the claim some folks make that fascism grows from liberalism. Germany's liberal tradition was not so well developed. It had been an autocratic monarchy for, if you count Prussia, for centuries. So that's one. As for why would I support liberal democracy? Because liberal democracy helped destroy fascism and outlasted communism. And it seems to be the best society available for human flourishing. So that's another one. I think it's absolutely sustainable. I also think, just to be clear, that while the Soviet Union contributed the overwhelming number of lives to the defeat of Nazi Germany, if we want to go counterfactual, the United States could have won that war all by itself. We could have just kept dropping atomic bombs until Germany was, I guess, ashes. So the notion that without the Soviet Union the world would have gone up in flames, no. The United States could have won that war all by itself. I'm glad we didn't have to. I am glad that the Soviet Union sacrificed, so much to win that war. Although I wish it had not had to sacrifice so much. And indeed, if Stalin had not allied with the Nazis, the Soviet people would not have been asked to make such a massive sacrifice. But in any event, the notion that liberal democracy cannot defend itself, cannot triumph over fascism, is just false. And indeed, liberal democracy almost single-handedly triumphed against fascism in the East, where the United States bore the brunt of the war effort against fascist Japan. So that's one point. Another point, as far as which would I choose, communism or fascism, I don't think I can say flatly which I would choose. I guess it depends. If we're talking about the Soviet Union versus Nazi Germany, then the Soviet Union. If we're talking about fascist Italy versus the Soviet Union, probably fascist Italy. So I think it depends on which one we're looking at. And that's the best answer I can give you on that. Because, again, I think we can make distinctions between how horrific each regime was. So... Now, I've heard other people say, well, if you're a German, then certainly Nazi Germany is better than the Soviet Union is for you, But broadly speaking, they're Kita. But I think if I'm being randomly thrown into such a society, I'm not going to bet on the Nazis. I'd take my chances in the Soviet Union. But if I could choose, like, fascist Italy, where the genocide is much lighter, although it still happened, see Ethiopia. Anyway, so that's like Doom Dalek says, Mussolini is more of a run-of-the-mill dictator. Again, not so much as Franco was, still fascism. But, if I gotta choose Mussolini or Stalin, I'm probably choosing Mussolini. But anyway, if I gotta choose Hitler or Stalin, I'm probably choosing Stalin. Anyway, that's a choice I'm very glad I don't have to make. All right. Let's see. Stop this, Bastiat. Fascist Italy was really bad and literally participated in the Holocaust. Yes, I recognize, too. You're right. But I have to think about this from a historical point of view. Like, by the end of the war, fascist Italy is basically an appendage of Nazi Germany. But, I mean, in the 1920s... fascist Italy is not so, is not like, what the Soviet Union, for example, was. And, I could argue that too, if we're talking about late-stage Soviet Union, the late-stage Soviet Union in the 1980s and 90s is a restrictive place, but it certainly isn't, I would choose that over probably even fascist Italy there. So, Anyway. All right. Okay. Although Kite's point is well taken, the average person in Germany or Italy were doing fine, while the average person in the Soviet Union was eating yellow snow to tide themselves over in the winter. That's true. Okay. Anyway, it's a rough choice, and I am glad that I live in a world where the United States helped ensure that that was not the choice I had to make. Okay. All right. God, could you imagine? I one of these days, folks, if this channel grows, and hopefully will continue to grow, one of these days, somebody will make a 7-hour YouTube video about how I am a fascist adjacent because I just made an apology for Mussolini's Italy over Soviet Stalinist Russia. Really, I think the best answer with a question like that is just not to even answer it. J-Dub says, full disclosure, I'm a socialist and I don't even think the Soviet Union and Nazis are remotely comparable. People forget fascism was only prominent for 1 decade-ish. And then they started World War II and almost destroyed Europe. Death toll compared to the amount of times and comparable to anything else. Yeah, you do have to count the war. But, I don't know. I mean, if you count the war... I mean, I don't know. That's tough. Because at that point, then... I guess that reminds me of people who say, well, you can't count famines in the Soviet Union because, you see, they were not intentional. Whereas all the deaths in Nazi Germany were intentional. You know, and the Soviet famines were primarily incompetence. Although, of course, in Ukraine, they were very much intentional. Look, you're dead as a result of state action. You are fucking dead. So, I don't think, for example, the fact that the British didn't intend for all those people to starve to death in India really makes much of a difference. It happened on their watch because of their action, as it happened in the Soviet Union, particularly in Ukraine, and as it happened in Nazi Germany. So I just, you know... Like, I'm willing to count the war, but we also got to count everything else, too. Okay. But yeah, I guess... In any event, and, you know, really, it's probably not a good thing to be comparing genocides, and like that's a tough thing to do. I really shouldn't be doing that. Let's see. Okay, you don't think social conservatism can exist with free market capitalism? Asked Julio Brina. I think it can. I just think free market capitalism probably makes social conservatism harder because people have free choices, and social conservatism has to survive on its merits rather than as something imposed by the state. So, okay. Oh, Hexit, this ain't good. Hexit just said, the famines were self-inflicted. They took the farms off the farmers and gave them the proletariat who didn't know how to farm. Oh, wait, you're saying that the famines were the result of Soviet policy. It was self-inflicted by the Soviet government. Okay. I thought you were going to say it was self-inflicted by the peasants. Which I wouldn't agree with. Occasionally, we've had somebody come in and say, you see, the famines cannot be blamed on Stalin because the peasants chose to kill their livestock and didn't surrender all their grain to the state and burn their houses down rather than give them over to the Soviet government. Yes, absolutely. If the American government were to come and establish a totalitarian state and seize my property, and I have no hope of ever getting it back because there's no independent judiciary or anything like that, yes, I would burn my house to the ground, I would burn all my crops to the ground, I would kill all my livestock, I would scorch everything rather than let the state have it. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can't, to say that they should have rewarded totalitarianism, no way. No. It was all the fault of the Soviet government under Joseph Stalin. Recorder Mike 95 says, is Endernax based on what? Just kidding. Endernax is okay. Kite, thank you so much for gifting 5 subscriptions. Holy macaroli. Thank you so much for that. 1 to I'm Vic James, bitch, who would appreciate that take. 1 to Captain O. 1 to Stupid Hand Vlad. 1 to Tale of the Tape 31. And 1 to Dino Sorcal. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Indeed, Breaded Bacon says the kulaks were doing praxis. And I gotta say, if you are lib-left, you probably would also agree that by fighting the Soviet state, the kulaks were doing... the Soviet state... The kulaks were doing praxis. Okay. Julio Moreno says, do you think being religious and being pro-science are mutually exclusive? I have no idea why they would be. I mean, I've always thought that if you are religious and you don't like evolution, just say, God did it, and that's it. Right? Isn't that the answer to everything if you're religious? Just say, God did it. Right? Like, doesn't matter. Just The universe was created by a big bang, and evolution happened, and God did all of it, right? So I don't know. I don't understand why they're why they would be exclusive, but I suppose, like Kite says, it depends on the religion. And thanks again, by the way, Kite, for those 5 subscriptions. I really, we are now, I believe, 3 subscriptions away from our goal of 275 for the night. So if we've got anybody who'd like to join on in and subscribe with Twitch Prime or Amazon Prime, I'd appreciate it. Okay. Bastiat admits God is responsible for everything. Well, I don't believe in God, but if I did, none of that would seem to preclude anything about science. Okay. Let's see. Bastiat, as a communist, I think the Soviet Union did more harm in the world than Nazi Germany did. Well, breaded bacon. I don't know if... That's a tough one. I guess it would depend on how you qualify the harm, but you could make that argument. Particularly if you blame everything that happened in communist China on the Soviet Union. If you're prepared to do that, then you can definitely make that claim. It's a tough claim. You can make it. But anyway. Okay. Let's see here. Recorder Mike says he won't admit. Who won't... Oh, Bastiat's a communist. He won't admit Friedman is the best communist ever. He's my favorite. I mean, could I say he's the best that ever lived? I suppose that's subjective, but he's certainly my favorite. Okay. Alligator222 says, does a hypothetical utopian society look more like socialism or capitalism or some other model? Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by utopia. The ultimate lawyer answer is always it depends, but I guess a utopia where scarcity has been abolished. I suppose where I have perfect individual freedom, scarcity is abolished. I don't know. I guess such a society would be one in which I no longer need government because I can protect myself utterly and produce everything for myself. And also, this comes at no cost or expense to anybody else because of technology. So I suppose it's some kind of I don't know. In the long run, maybe it's libertarian, but also socialist. Libertarian in the ultimate of individual freedom, but socialist in the fact that there is no more capitalism, because how could it exist if human labor is no longer needed and goods are never scarce? Right? I guess that's probably my thoughts on that. I don't know. That's a technological thing though, and here's the point that I would make. I do not think that society will evolve beyond capitalism by social means. I think that is a technological development, and that indeed capitalism should be doubled down upon, if anything, to further the advancement of society and technological development, so that we achieve that future, right? Transhumanism. Yeah, transhumanist Bastiat. Lifetree says that's not socialist. There would be no economic system because there's no scarcity. Yeah, if there's no economic system, I guess because I don't know what this society would look like, I tend to imagine that there's still some kind of state, and that the state still is invested with some powers, and it probably is still involved in production. But I don't know. It's tough. I am skeptical of the notion that we could ever get away from having a state of some kind, but maybe. But in any event, it would have to be, this utopian would have to be fundamentally libertarian in individual freedom, and production would have to be so efficient that wouldn't matter how much waste we had, we would always have, scarcity would be abolished. Okay, let's see. Right here, Janet Yellen is on Twitter now. How soon till she starts posting guillotine memes? I have no doubt that she will be at Treasury, will be guillotining bad economic policy. No, I have no. I don't know that Janet Yellen will have anything to do with guillotine memes. She is based a neoliberal folk hero whose time at the Federal Reserve was solid, and whose time at Treasury will surely be nothing less. I am curious to see what, if any, resistance the Republicans in the Senate, should they keep the Senate, will put up to Janet Yellen, because she seems great. Neera Tanden, on the other hand, may get a little more resistance. Okay. All right. Bastiat, what are your thoughts on giving preferential loans to co-ops to eventually get socialism? I don't think we should preferentially... At least I'm very skeptical of the notion of giving these entities preferential treatment, but they shouldn't be discriminated against, I guess, by the government. But I don't want to subsidize them either. I just would like them to exist on their own, and if that's what people want to found, they will found them and build them. Okay, let's see here. Did you start out religious and become atheist, or were you always atheist? No, I was once religious. I will never forget the most religious experience I ever had in my life. I looked up, I went to Playboy.com on my first laptop as a youngin'. The first thing I did when I got internet connection was go to Nintendo.com, and then I went to Playboy.com. So that was my priorities at 12 or so, was pornography and then Nintendo and then pornography. I was thinking, gosh, these website addresses are going to be on the internet bill that my dad opens up. He's going to see that I went to Nintendo.com and then to Playboy.com. He's going to see that I was looking at porn, and I'm going to get in trouble. And so I literally got down on my knees and prayed to God and Jesus that he would hide my internet search history. And I really thought that God and Jesus were listening and that they would help me out. So that was my one other experience with religion. I tend to agree with RSK Zeus. Everyone isn't religious until shit hits the fan and you gotta pray. So I will say this. My dad never saw my internet search history, such as it existed prior to that point. So, God confirmed. Libtards BTFO. Who can say? That being said, I don't think there's anything stupid about believing in God. I don't think there's anything wrong about God or religion, generally speaking. I just don't subscribe to it. But I did indeed ask, as Citizen Cicero says, for God, the creator of the universe, and his one and only Son, sent to save mankind from its sins, to save me from the bonk of horny jail. Doom Dalek says Bastiat was a Coomer. Who isn't a Coomer? Alright? Okay. As for being an atheist, I guess I was never a big believer. But I have nothing against people who are. And indeed, I think that the American conception of religious liberty is, generally speaking, a good thing. I like the idea of law protecting religious freedom. It shouldn't be limitless. I don't like, for example, the fact that many decisions can be made on behalf of children for religious reasons that are lifelong and binding. For example, I am very troubled by the notion of circumcision as a lifetime physical decision made on behalf of a child when they were very young. But, there are a lot of physical decisions, I suppose, that you would make similarly. That I think you could also argue against. So, permanent lifetime decisions, I think there's a real argument against saying, oh yes, that's A-okay for religious liberty. But, other decisions, it's tough. And I wouldn't want that, I wouldn't have wanted that to happen to me, But, I recognize the serious nature of those traditions, and But I agree with legendary Rob Boss. I agree parents should give their boys a choice on whether they want an anteater dick when they grow up. Okay. All right. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we got 4 minutes left. Let me see if we got any other hits on Twitter.com to share with everybody. I guess not. I guess I haven't been canceled on Twitter or anything yet. All right, long-term goals for this channel, for your public persona. I'll say this, Alligator2222. What I hope more than anything for this channel is that it can be a voice in support of a reinvigorated liberalism. That is, say, a commitment to individual freedom that recognizes that a healthy state, some form of welfare state and social guarantees is necessary, but that is nevertheless committed fundamentally to individual freedom, which socialism, I argue, is not, and which this new breed of national conservatism is not. So I hope that what I do here is in some way, contributes toward that goal of a reinvigorated liberal democracy here in the United States. And I guess beyond that, I would like to grow and make money and all that good stuff. But that's my goal for the stream and for the channel. All right, so that's the way I feel about it. All right. Baron Van Foggy says, Bastiat, the goal is to get the size where you do a 3-hour moderated media share stream and sit back watching, reacting to videos while we give you free money. Very true. And I will say, we should probably be, we should go for another 15 minutes so we can get to the 3-hour stream. 3 hours is a good length for a stream. Pure White says, so you want to steer the ship to avoid populism on both sides? Yes, absolutely. Have you considered joining in on Destiny's canvassing attempts in Georgia? I have Destiny 93, although I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it, and I will probably try and contribute money or something instead. But I am thinking about it. Public influence is your goal. Altruistic. Au contraire, Alligator2222. Lest you catch me saying that I'm doing something altruistic, I would never pretend for a moment in my life to be doing anything altruistic. This is the most self-interested goal of all. I think the United States is an essential institution for my freedom as an individual. And so I want the United States to exist as a strong liberal democracy because I think my freedom will thrive most in such a society. That's what it's all about to me. So yeah, it's still self-interested, but nice try. Okay, based Romney still. I think Mitt Romney is among the best the Republican Party has to offer, but it's going to be a long time probably before I vote for the Republican Party. Okay. Sorry, my hair is getting a little sweaty here. It's a little messy. Bastiat, your favorite presidents of all time? Oh, that's tough. There are a lot of good ones, but I'll say there's one president who doesn't get enough positive attention. That's James K. Polk. James K. Polk was president for 4 years, and his campaign, his promise was to expand the United States to the Pacific by getting the Pacific Northwest from Britain and the American Southwest from Mexico. James K. Polk also promised to do all this in one term, and he did it. He succeeded, and he kept his promise to keep himself to one term. That's a pretty successful administration, as far as I can say, in terms of setting goals and achieving goals, setting promises and following them. So, James K. Polk, give him a view. Now, James K. Polk was still a damn dirty slaveholder, and you could argue the expansion of the American Southwest made the Civil War inevitable. Did he do it ethically? He waged war against a dictatorship that arguably attacked us first, so I don't have an issue with the Mexican-American War. Is your wife going to be mad at you? She may be, but you're right. You know what? I did say 30 minutes. I should go with 30 minutes. So we'll go with 30 minutes. We'll wind it down now. Let's see who's out there that we might be able to check out, though, on twitch.tv. Let's see, who's out there that we can check out tonight? Okay, let's see who's out there. Let's see, Dylan's got a bunch of people. Let's see, you know, I wish, there's a great streamer by the name of Claire's World. I wish she was streaming. I'll have to check her out. Let's see, Holly Cannabis. What is Holly Cannabis doing? Let's see what Holly Cannabis is doing. We did Lecture Fan the other night. Let's see. There you go. Yeah, we'll check out Holly Cannabis. Ooh, we could check out Sheepdog TV. Sheepdog TV is very conservative. And Sheepdog TV is also... Oh, wait! I know who we're visiting. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't even close. Well, I know who we're visiting. Let me just make sure he's on. Let me make sure he's good. All right, I know who we're visiting. And this one is not even close, but it's been a long time coming. This guy's a great friend of the channel. And let me just make sure. Do Hassan for memes? No. Hassan wouldn't even notice. It'd be like pissing in the ocean. Okay. Insult us. I don't have anything against Hassan. Not Rage Pope? It's definitely Rage Pope. Rage Pope is a longtime friend of the channel. He raids us all the time. I want to raid him back. So Rage Pope, interesting guy. I think you'll be interested in his takes. He's playing StarCraft, so be sure to check that out as well. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a real delight to have each and every one of you here. Don't forget to check our Twitter, our Discord, and our YouTube. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good community. Hey, I hope you all have a wonderful night. And in the words of Joe Biden, God bless the United States of America. May God protect our troops. We'll see y'all real soon. Take care.